Story 1. Mean stepsis. Made sure I'm not her family, but now wants me to give up my home for her and her kids. So, let me just start this off by saying, this is kind of a long story, but I need to get it off my chest. I'm Lexi, 25, and I've got a stepsister, Brianna, who's 26. We've also got two younger half-siblings. But this is really about me and Brianna. Well, mostly about how she's been a total nightmare since the moment our parents got married. I was 7 when my mom married her dad, and I guess I was supposed to be happy about gaining a new family and all that. But from the very first day, Brianna made it crystal clear she didn't want me around. Like, I honestly don't even know why. She just hated me right off the bat. I tried to be nice, like any 7-year-old would, right? I thought maybe we could be friends, hang out, maybe play together or whatever kids do. But nope, she wasn't having any of it. She would just look at me like I was trash or something. You know that look where someone doesn't even want to acknowledge you exist? Yeah, that was Brianna. It didn't matter what I did, she would always make sure I knew she didn't want me around. At first, I thought maybe it was because I was the new kid in the family or something. Maybe she was mad about our parents getting married. But as time went on, it became clear that it wasn't just that. She just genuinely didn't like me. At school, it was even worse. We went to the same elementary school, and she made sure everyone knew we weren't real sisters. She would say things like, "Oh, she's just my stepsister," or "We're not actually related," whenever someone brought it up. And she didn't stop there. She'd go out of her way to embarrass me in front of other kids. I remember one time during recess, she told the other kids that I wasn't part of her family and that her dad only married my mom because she needed somewhere to live. I was 7. How are you going to be that cruel to a kid who's just trying to figure out how families work? Her dad, my stepdad, saw what was going on and tried to step in a few times. He'd tell her to knock it off, that we're all family now, and she needed to treat me better. For a while, I think it kind of worked. Like, she stopped being as mean in front of him. But the second he wasn't around, she'd go right back to being a complete jerk. It's like she took pleasure in making me feel like I didn't belong. And honestly, as a little kid, I didn't know how to handle that. I was already trying to adjust to this whole new family situation, and having someone actively reject me made it so much harder. I'd go home after school crying some days, telling my mom about how Brianna was treating me, and she'd always say the same thing. She'll come around, just give her time. Spoiler alert, she never came around. Brianna even started trying to get our younger half-siblings involved. Like, she'd tell them I wasn't their real sister, and that they shouldn't listen to me or hang out with me. This was when they were little, so they didn't really understand what was going on. But still, the fact that she would even try to pull them into her little hate campaign against me, that's messed up, right? She was always trying to find new ways to get under my skin. Now, I'm not going to say my whole childhood was horrible because of Brianna. I had good times too, especially with my mom and stepdad. They did their best to make me feel included, and they were supportive whenever I talked about how Brianna was treating me. But there was always that cloud hanging over me, knowing that the one person who should have been my closest ally in all this, my stepsister, wanted nothing to do with me. And when she did want something to do with me, it was just to make me miserable. I think the worst part was when she started spreading rumors about me at school. There was this one time in middle school when Brianna told a bunch of kids that I had stolen something from her, which I hadn't. But kids being kids, they believed her. And suddenly, I was the thief at school. It was humiliating, and she knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just being mean, she was actively trying to ruin my life. Eventually, it got to the point where my stepdad had to step in big time. Brianna's attitude was so bad that she stopped coming over to our house for a while. He told her straight up that if she couldn't at least pretend to be civil, then she shouldn't bother coming around at all. I don't know if that was the right move, but honestly, it was kind of a relief. At least I didn't have to deal with her constantly being in my face, making me feel like crap. She eventually moved in with her mom full time when she was around 13 or so. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, like maybe the distance would give her some perspective or something. But nope, it didn't. We still saw each other sometimes. Holidays, birthdays, that sort of thing. And every single time, she made it clear that nothing had changed. She was still just as cruel, just as dismissive, and just as determined to make me feel like an outsider in my own family. By the time we were teenagers, I had pretty much given up on trying to have any sort of relationship with her. I mean, what was the point? I'd spent years trying to be nice, trying to reach out, and she had never once made any effort to meet me halfway. So I just stopped caring. If she wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then fine. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on her. I remember the last time we had any kind of interaction that wasn't straight up hostile. We were 16, and she had just had her first kid. Yeah, she got pregnant at 16 and moved back in with us for a while. You'd think maybe motherhood would change her, soften her or something, right? Nah, she was the same Brianna. If anything, she got worse. She wouldn't let me anywhere near her baby. She told me to never touch her kid, never talk to them, never even look at them. Like I was some kind of monster she needed to protect her child from. It was at that point that I knew for sure. There was never going to be any kind of sisterly bond between us. She made sure of that. And honestly, I was done trying. I had my own life to focus on, and if she wanted to be a bitter, hateful person, that was her choice. But I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her anymore. So yeah, that's where it all started. It's been years since we last saw each other, and honestly, I thought I was done with her. But as it turns out, she wasn't done with me. Alright, so where I left off, I hadn't seen or talked to Brianna in years, and I was honestly cool with that. My life was moving along fine without her drama, and I was doing my own thing. But then, a couple of months ago, I get this phone call from my mom. Now, my mom isn't one to call me for no reason, so I immediately knew something was up. I pick up the phone and she's like, "Hey Lexi, there's something we need to talk about." Right away, I'm thinking, great, what now? My mom has this way of sugarcoating stuff, so I already knew whatever she was about to say was probably bad news. So she starts off all casual, telling me about how Brianna has had a really hard time lately. Apparently, she lost her job a few months ago, and then not long after that, she lost her house. Now she's living with my mom and stepdad along with her 4 kids, and things are, in her words, a bit tense. At this point, I'm still just listening, but I'm not exactly feeling sorry for Brianna. I mean, after everything she's done, how can I? But then, my mom drops the bomb. Brianna's been asking if she and the kids can stay with you for a while. I swear I almost dropped my phone. Like what? Stay with me? The same person who couldn't stand me for years now wants to move into my house with 4 kids? I didn't even know how to respond at first. I just kind of sat there in silence for a minute, trying to process it all. My mom took that as her chance to keep talking, telling me about how cramped their house is and how it would be really helpful if I could take Brianna in for a little bit, just until she gets back on her feet. Now here's the thing. I've worked hard to get where I am. I've got my own place, a job I'm proud of, and a life that's finally drama-free. The last thing I want is to throw Brianna and her chaos into the mix. Plus, 4 kids? That's not a little bit of help. That's a whole new life I didn't sign up for. So I just said, "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea." Of course, she tried to talk me into it. "Lexi, she's your sister. She's family. Don't you think you should help her out?" But honestly, family or not, there's a limit to what I'm willing to deal with. And Brianna passed that limit a long time ago. I told my mom, "Look, I get that she's in a tough spot, but she's never treated me like family. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it." My mom didn't exactly like hearing that, but I wasn't about to let her guilt me into something I knew I'd regret. And that's when things really took a turn. The very next day, Brianna called me herself. Now, mind you, I hadn't heard her voice in years, so when I saw her name pop up on my phone, my heart started racing a little bit. I wasn't even sure if I should answer it, but I figured it was better to get it over with. So I picked up, and before I could even say hello, she jumped straight into it. "Lexi, I need your help," she said, not even bothering with pleasantries. She sounded desperate, which I guess made sense given the situation, but it still caught me off guard. I mean, this is someone who spent her whole life acting like I didn't exist, and now she's asking me for help like we're suddenly best friends? She went on to explain that she and her kids were crammed into a tiny room at my parents' house, and that it wasn't working out. There was no space, her kids were constantly fighting, and she was at her wits' end. I listened, but all I could think about was how she'd treated me like garbage for years, and now she expected me to swoop in and save her. Then she hit me with the wildest part. She didn't just want to stay with me. She wanted me to move out of my house and move back in with our parents so she and her kids could take over my place. I swear I almost laughed out loud when she said it. Like, is she for real? She basically told me that she needed my house more than I did, and I could help the family by making the sacrifice. I was stunned. I couldn't even form words for a second. When I finally did respond, all I could manage was, "Wait, you want me to move out of my house for you?" I was hoping I misunderstood or something, but nope. She doubled down. "Yes," she said, like it was the most normal request in the world. "You can go live with mom and dad for a while. They have plenty of space. It's just until I get back on my feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman, who had made my life a living hell, was now trying to kick me out of my own home. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, and said, "Brianna, that's not going to happen. I'm not giving up my house. I worked hard for it, and I'm not about to hand it over to you." That's when she lost it. She started yelling, calling me selfish, saying I didn't care about family, that I was leaving her out to dry. She even threw in the fact that I don't have kids, like that somehow made me less deserving of my own home. She was full-on guilt-tripping me, trying to make me feel bad for not helping her out. But here's the thing, I wasn't going to fall for it. Not this time. I'd spent years trying to make peace with her, trying to be the bigger person, and where did it get me? Nowhere. So I just calmly said, Brianna, I'm sorry you're in this situation, but it's not my responsibility to fix it. You've never wanted anything to do with me, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to uproot my life for you? No. That didn't go over well. She started screaming even louder, telling me I was a horrible person, that I was turning my back on my own family. It was honestly pretty shocking how fast she turned from desperate to angry. I didn't know what else to say, so I just hung up the phone. After that, I didn't hear from her for a while. I figured she had gotten the message, but I was wrong. A few days later, my mom called again, and this time she was really upset. Apparently, Brianna had been complaining to her nonstop about how I was being selfish and unwilling to help. My mom, bless her heart, was still trying to play peacemaker, saying, Can't you just let her stay for a little while? She really needs help, Lexi. But I wasn't budging. I told my mom the same thing I told Brianna. I'm not giving up my house, and I'm not letting her walk all over me. I've had enough of her crap. My mom wasn't happy, but I could tell she was starting to get where I was coming from. Brianna's entitlement was off the charts, and even my mom couldn't deny that. Still, she was stuck in the middle, trying to keep the peace between her two daughters. But I wasn't about to let Brianna use that to manipulate me anymore. Update 1. Alright, so after the whole phone call mess with Brianna, I was feeling pretty good about standing my ground. I figured she'd either find another solution or keep complaining to our parents until they got sick of her. Either way, it was out of my hands, and I could finally get back to living my life. Or so I thought. A couple of weeks later, I was sitting at home on a Saturday, just minding my own business, when there's a knock at my door. Now, I don't really get many visitors, so I was a little confused. I wasn't expecting anyone, and honestly, I kind of hoped it was just some delivery guy with a package or something. But when I opened the door, guess who was standing there? Yep, Brianna. She was standing on my doorstep with all 4 of her kids and a bunch of suitcases. My stomach dropped. Like, seriously? I just stood there for a second, not even knowing what to say. She looked at me with this dead serious expression and said, Lexi, we need to talk. I felt my face get hot. I wasn't mad at first. I was more shocked than anything. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my cool. Her kids were all standing there, looking tired and kind of confused, and I felt bad for them. But I couldn't believe she actually showed up like this. Brianna sighed like she was annoyed with me, which made no sense. Look, Lexi, I've got nowhere else to go. It's too cramped at Mom and Dad's, and they're getting frustrated with me. I thought you'd have a little more empathy, considering we're family. I could feel my jaw tighten. Empathy. After everything she put me through, she wanted to play the family card now? I was still trying to wrap my head around the fact that she was standing on my porch, clearly expecting me to just let her and her kids move in. I wasn't having it. Brianna, I said, trying my best not to lose my temper. I already told you I'm not letting you stay here. I don't know why you thought showing up unannounced would change anything. She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. You're being ridiculous. It's not like I'm asking for much. We'll only be here for a little while, just until I can find a new job and a place for the kids. At that point, I could feel the anger bubbling up. You're not staying here, I said, louder this time. I'm sorry you're in a tough spot, but you've never wanted anything to do with me. And now you expect me to just drop everything for you? Her kids were starting to get restless, and I could tell this conversation wasn't going to go anywhere good. Brianna, of course, wasn't giving up that easily. She shifted her weight and said, It's not just about me, Lexi. Think about the kids. They need somewhere stable. Don't you care about them? Okay, let me pause for a second here. Of course I care about the kids. They didn't do anything wrong, and it's not their fault their mom put them in this situation. But that doesn't mean it's my responsibility to fix everything. I had no connection to them, thanks to Brianna making sure I was never part of their lives. So, while I felt for them, I wasn't about to let her guilt me into taking them in. I care, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But you made it clear a long time ago that I wasn't part of their lives. You didn't want me near them? Now all of a sudden I'm supposed to play the hero? She huffed and glared at me. It's not about the past anymore, Lexi. You need to grow up. Things are different now. I'm asking you as a mother, not as your stepsister. I couldn't believe the nerve of her, as if her being a mother erased all the crap she put me through growing up. I took a deep breath, knowing this wasn't going to end well. Brianna, I'm not doing this. You need to leave. Her face twisted into something like a mix of anger and desperation. So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on me? On the kids? After everything we've been through, you're just going to let us suffer? At that point, I was done. I was trying to stay calm for the sake of the kids, but her entitlement was too much. You made your choice a long time ago, I said firmly. You didn't want me in your life then, and I'm not letting you use me now. She glared at me, her eyes narrowed. You're unbelievable. You really think you're better than me, don't you? That hit a nerve. I wasn't trying to act like I was better than her. I just wasn't about to let her walk all over me. But before I could even respond, her oldest kid, who looked like she was around 10 or so, tugged on Brianna's arm and said, Mom, can we go? I'm tired. Brianna glanced down at her, and for a second I thought maybe she'd give up and leave. But nope, she turned back to me and said, You're making a huge mistake, Lexi. Don't think I'm going to forget this. And with that, she stormed off, her kids trailing behind her. I watched as they loaded back into their car, Brianna muttering under her breath the whole time. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or just angry. Probably a mix of both. As they drove off, I shut the door and leaned against it, trying to process what just happened. I mean, I knew Brianna was entitled, but showing up at my house with her kids and expecting me to just roll over like that, it blew my mind. I felt bad for her kids. They didn't deserve any of this. But I wasn't about to let Brianna manipulate me into giving up my home. After she left, I called my mom to let her know what happened. She wasn't surprised, but she did sound disappointed that I didn't help. I understand, Lexi, she said, but Brianna's in a really tough spot right now. Maybe there's another way you can help. But I had already made up my mind. Mom, I'm not getting involved. I can't. She's never treated me like family, and I'm not about to let her drag me down into her mess. My mom sighed. I just wish things were different. Me too, I said, and I meant it. But some things never change, and Brianna was one of them. Update 2. After Brianna and her kids left, I thought maybe that was the end of it. Like, she'd finally understand that I wasn't going to give in and she'd move on to bothering someone else. But of course, that's not how it worked out. Honestly, I should have known better. It didn't take long before things escalated in a way I wasn't expecting. A few days after her dramatic visit, I got another call from my mom. Now, this wasn't unusual. She and I talked fairly often, but the second I answered, I could tell something was up. Her voice was tight, like she was stressed or trying not to yell, which immediately put me on edge. Lexi, I need to talk to you about what happened with Brianna, she said, jumping straight into it. I sighed. Mom, I already told you what happened. She showed up at my house and I told her she couldn't stay here. Yeah, well, she's been talking to your stepdad and me nonstop since then, saying how unfair you're being. She's claiming you're turning your back on family and she hesitated. And she's saying we should be cutting you off for not helping her. I was stunned for a second. Like, Brianna was really out here trying to turn my own mom and stepdad against me because I wouldn't let her take over my house? The audacity! I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Wait, she's telling you guys to cut me off? Pretty much, Mom replied. She's making it sound like you're heartless for not helping her and the kids when they need it. She's really got your stepdad all worked up. He's been talking about how we should be doing more to support her as a family. I couldn't believe it. Mom, you know that's ridiculous, right? She's trying to manipulate you because I won't give her what she wants. Mom sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I know, Lexi. I get it. But things are getting tense here. Your stepdad feels like we should be supporting her more, especially with the kids involved. And Brianna, well, you know how she is. She's making us feel like we're failing her as parents. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. This was exactly what I was afraid of. Brianna pulling everyone into her drama and making me the villain for not bending to her demands. Mom, listen, I get that she's in a bad spot, but that doesn't mean I'm responsible for fixing her problems. I've been more than clear about why I can't help her. I know, Mom said softly, but you need to understand that your stepdad is struggling with this. He doesn't like seeing his daughter in such a rough place, and he feels like we should be doing more to make sure the kids are okay. And there it was, the guilt trip. It wasn't even Mom doing it on purpose, but hearing her talk about the kids like that made me feel like I was the bad guy. But I wasn't. I knew that. Brianna was using her kids as pawns in her little game, and I wasn't about to let myself get played. Mom, I'm not going to let Brianna guilt me into anything. I understand that the kids are in a tough spot, but that's on her, not me. She's the one who's made her choices, and now she has to deal with the consequences. Mom was quiet for a moment, and I could tell she was trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, she spoke. Lexi, I wish things weren't like this. I hate seeing the family so divided. Me too, I said, my voice softer now. But this isn't on me, Mom. Brianna has been treating me like I don't exist for years, and now all of a sudden she wants my help? That's not how family works. There was another pause, and then she sighed. I know, you're right. But just be prepared, Lexi. Your stepdad is really upset, and I'm worried he's going to take Brianna's side in all of this. That hit me harder than I expected. I'd always had a decent relationship with my stepdad, and the thought of him turning on me because of Brianna's manipulations made me feel sick. But I couldn't back down now. I had to stand my ground no matter how messy things got. "Thanks for the heads up, Mom," I said quietly, "but I'm not going to change my mind." "I know," she replied. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want this to get any worse." After we hung up, I couldn't help but feel this knot in my stomach. It was like no matter what I did, Brianna was determined to drag me into her mess. And now she was turning my stepdad against me too? It was exhausting, and honestly, I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. But of course, Brianna wasn't done. A few days later, I started getting calls from other family members, people I hadn't talked to in months. My aunt, my cousin, even some distant relatives on my stepdad's side. Every single one of them had the same story. Brianna had been going around telling them how I'd refused to help her when she was desperate and homeless, painting me as the villain in her little sob story. It was infuriating. I knew she was manipulative, but this was a new low, even for her. I spent half my time fielding calls from concerned relatives, all of them trying to guilt me into doing the right thing by helping her out. I couldn't believe how easily she'd managed to get them on her side, even though none of them knew the full story. At one point, my cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in over a year, called me up and started lecturing me about family values and how I was letting my pride get in the way of helping someone in need. I was so close to losing it, but I managed to keep my cool long enough to explain my side of the story. "Look," I told her, "you don't know the half of it. Brianna's been treating me like dirt since we were kids. Now she wants me to give up my home for her? That's not happening." My cousin tried to argue, saying that people change and that Brianna was just trying to survive, but I wasn't having it. "She hasn't changed at all," I said, my voice firm. "She's just using this situation to get what she wants. I'm not falling for it." By the time we hung up, I was exhausted. I couldn't believe how much energy Brianna was draining from me, even when she wasn't physically in my life. It was like she'd found a way to invade my space without even being there. As the days went on, the calls finally started to die down, but the tension with my mom and stepdad was still there. Every conversation felt like it was walking on eggshells, and I could tell they were struggling to balance their loyalty to me with their guilt over Brianna. It was a mess, and I hated that it had come to this. But no matter how much pressure they put on me, I wasn't going to give in. Brianna had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. And if that meant I had to be the bad guy in her story, so be it. Update 3. So, after all the chaos of Brianna trying to weasel her way into my life and my house, you'd think things might finally calm down, right? Wrong. Because of course, Brianna had one more trick up her sleeve. This time, though, it wasn't just phone calls or guilt trips from relatives. It was something way worse. It started with a knock on the door. Now, after everything that had happened, I was a little paranoid about people just showing up at my place unannounced, so I wasn't exactly thrilled to hear knocking. I checked the peephole, and there was a man standing there in a uniform. My heart sank because I immediately thought something bad had happened. I opened the door, and he handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." I stared at the envelope, confused and a little freaked out. I hadn't done anything wrong, so what was this about? I opened it right there, and to my absolute shock, I was looking at some kind of legal paperwork. It took me a second to process it, but when I finally understood what I was reading, I couldn't believe it. Brianna was suing me. For what? To force me to let her and her kids stay in my house. I'm not kidding. She had actually gone and filed some kind of claim that I was denying her housing or some nonsense, trying to legally force me to give up my home for her and her kids. I could barely even comprehend it. I mean, who does that? She couldn't guilt me into it, so now she was trying to legally take my home? I felt this wave of anger and disbelief wash over me. I didn't even know you could do something like that. I called my mom immediately and told her what happened. She was just as shocked as I was. "That can't be real," she said. "There's no way she can do that." But it was real. I double-checked the paperwork, and sure enough, Brianna had actually gone to a lawyer to try and pull this off. I was in total disbelief. I called a lawyer myself to figure out what my options were, and thankfully, he reassured me that this whole thing was ridiculous, and there was no way it would hold up in court. Still, the fact that Brianna had even tried something like this was insane. The lawyer told me not to worry too much, but we'd still have to deal with it legally, so we started prepping. I couldn't believe it had come to this. I mean, it's one thing to have a toxic family member who tries to take advantage of you, But to actually sue your own stepsister because she won't give you her house? That's a whole new level of entitlement. A few weeks later, we had the court date set, and I was feeling pretty nervous. I knew I had the law on my side, but I also knew how manipulative Brianna could be. I was worried she'd try to spin the situation to make me look like the bad guy again, like she'd been doing with our family. But there was no turning back now. We had to go through with it. When the day finally came, I walked into that courtroom feeling a mix of anxiety and anger. Brianna was already there with her lawyer, and when I saw her, I swear she didn't even look worried. If anything, she looked smug, like she actually thought she was going to win. I sat down with my lawyer, and we started going over everything. The judge called us up, and Brianna's lawyer started making this whole case about how she was a struggling mother of four, and I had refused to provide housing for her in her time of need. The way they talked, you'd think I was some kind of heartless monster who kicked her and her kids out onto the street. I couldn't believe the lengths she was going to make me look bad. She didn't mention, of course, how she'd been horrible to me for years, or how she'd tried to manipulate me into giving up my house. It was all about how she was a single mom, just trying to provide for her kids, and how I was the selfish stepsister standing in her way. When it was our turn, my lawyer laid everything out. He explained how Brianna had never wanted anything to do with me until she needed something, how she had shown up at my house unannounced, demanding that I move out so she could move in, and how she'd been trying to guilt me into helping her, even though we had no real relationship. The judge listened carefully, and I could see him nodding along, understanding where I was coming from. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The judge turned to Brianna and asked her point blank, "Why do you believe you are entitled to your stepsister's home?" And that's when it all fell apart for her. She stuttered and tried to make it about the kids again, but the judge wasn't having it. He cut her off and basically told her that this was a ridiculous claim. He explained that I had no legal obligation to let her stay in my house, and that just because she was in a tough situation didn't mean she could take advantage of family. Hearing the judge say that out loud was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Brianna looked like she'd been slapped in the face. Her smug attitude completely disappeared, and she just stood there, speechless. I could see the realization hit her. She wasn't going to get what she wanted this time. The judge dismissed the case, and that was it. I walked out of that courtroom with a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Brianna didn't even look at me as we left. She just grabbed her stuff and stormed out with her lawyer. I wasn't sure what would happen after that, but I knew one thing. I was finally done with her. When I got home, I called my mom to tell her what happened. She was relieved, but also sad. I could tell she was still struggling with the whole situation, and I felt bad for her. But at the same time, I couldn't keep letting Brianna ruin my life. Enough was enough. Since then, Brianna hasn't tried to contact me. I haven't heard a word from her, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I've got my life back, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control again. So yeah, that's the story of how my stepsister tried to take my house and ended up losing everything. It's not exactly the happy ending I wanted, but at least now I know where I stand. And honestly, I'm just glad it's over. Story 2. I ruined my family's life after they sided with my golden sister who cheated with my BF. Alright, so this is going to sound like some crazy drama, but it's 100% what happened, and yeah, I don't regret it one bit. This all went down about 10 years ago when I was 19. Back then, life was pretty good, or at least I thought it was. It was around the holidays, which usually meant I'd get to see all my family, but this particular Christmas, everything just fell apart. So picture this. I was dating this guy named Nick. He was my first real boyfriend, and I thought we were pretty solid. You know how it is with your first love, you just assume it's gonna last forever. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and yeah, I was crazy about him. I was that girl who thought, oh, we're gonna get married, have kids, and live happily ever after. I had no reason to doubt him because he always seemed so committed to me. Then there's my older sister, Claire. She's 2 years older than me and was kind of like my role model growing up. I looked up to her for basically everything. She was smart, popular, and just had her life together, or so I thought. We used to hang out a lot too, so when Nick and I started dating, I introduced him to her pretty early on because, I wanted them to like each other. Big mistake. But I'll get to that in a minute. So, fast forward to Christmas. My family had this big get-together planned, but the vibe was weird from the start. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt off, especially with Claire. She was acting kind of distant, and Nick was being, I don't know, sketchy? Like, just not himself. My gut was telling me something was up, but I didn't want to believe it. I mean, you don't expect your own sister to be shady, right? Anyway, a few days after Christmas, I found out exactly what had been going on. And when I say found out, I mean I literally walked in on them. Yeah, I walked into Claire's room to borrow her hair straightener or something, And there they were, Nick and my sister, making out like two teenagers at prom. My heart just stopped. It was one of those moments where time kind of freezes, you know? Like, you can't believe what your eyes are seeing. I didn't even say anything at first. I just stood there staring at them, trying to process what was happening. I mean, what do you even say in a situation like that? They didn't notice me for a good few seconds. But then Nick looked up and froze. Claire did too. And the look on her face? She looked like a deer in headlights. There was no denying what was going on. It was right there in front of me. My boyfriend and my sister. I just remember feeling this wave of anger, sadness, and shock all at once. My chest felt tight, and I thought I was going to throw up. I managed to choke out something like, "Are you serious?" And then I just bolted out of the house. I didn't know where I was going, I just needed to get out of there. My mind was racing, and my heart was shattered. The two people I trusted the most had stabbed me in the back, and I didn't know how to handle it. Later that night, my parents found me. I'd been sitting in my car for what felt like hours, just crying and trying to make sense of everything. When they knocked on my window, I thought, finally, they're here to comfort me. But no, they didn't. Instead, they told me to calm down and think rationally. Rationally? Seriously? They tried to convince me that these things happen and it's just a guy. But it wasn't just about Nick. It was about Claire, my sister, betraying me in the worst way possible. They kept saying things like, family is family, you have to forgive her. Like, what the hell? How was I supposed to forgive her for this? I was furious. I felt like I had been tossed aside, like my feelings didn't even matter. It got even worse when Claire had the nerve to come to me and say, "I'm sorry, but we didn't mean to hurt you. Nick and I just have feelings for each other." Feelings for each other? Are you kidding me? They'd been sneaking around behind my back and now they were in love? I couldn't even look at her. I told her she was dead to me and that I never wanted to see her again. And I meant it. But of course, my parents weren't having it. They kept pushing the whole family forgiveness thing, saying I was being dramatic. My dad actually told me to grow up. My own dad. It felt like I was losing my entire family in one go. I couldn't believe they were siding with her. It was like I didn't matter at all. I'd lost my boyfriend, my sister, and now my parents too. I was alone. For months, I didn't know how to cope. I was depressed and just numb. I stopped talking to everyone. I'd go to work, come home, and just stay in bed. I'd cry until I couldn't anymore. The only person I really had during that time was my best friend Sam. She was the one who made sure I was eating, made sure I was getting out of bed, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was worthless, like maybe they were right and I was just being dramatic. Eventually, it all got too much for me. One night, I just broke. I didn't see a way out of the pain, and I thought the only way to make it stop was to end it. So I wrote this long letter explaining everything about Claire, about Nick, about how betrayed I felt by everyone, and I scheduled it to post on Tumblr after I was gone. Then I swallowed a bunch of pills, laid down, and just waited for it all to be over. But Sam, being the amazing person she is, found me. She called 911, and I guess they got to me just in time because I woke up in the hospital the next morning. I was groggy and confused, but I was alive. They put me on suicide watch after that, and honestly, it was the best thing for me at the time. I needed help. I needed to be away from everything and everyone who had hurt me. My grandparents were the only ones who visited me while I was there. Not my parents, not Claire, just my grandparents. They didn't try to force me to forgive anyone. They just sat with me, let me talk, and actually listened. They saved me in more ways than one. They picked me up when I got discharged and took me to live with them. I cut off everyone else, and for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I could start to heal. So after I got out of the hospital, like I said before, my grandparents took me in. I can't even explain how grateful I am for them. They didn't try to force anything, didn't push me to talk about stuff if I wasn't ready. They were just there for me. I was still struggling a lot mentally, but for the first time, I felt like I had some kind of support system. But even though I was safe and in a better environment, the fallout from everything was just getting started. See, I had completely cut off my parents and Claire. I blocked them on everything. Facebook, Instagram, my phone, all of it. I didn't want to hear a single word from them. I was done. They didn't care about me when I needed them, so why should I bother? But while I was trying to heal and move on, my best friend Sam was out there, pissed off on my behalf. She was fuming about what happened and wasn't going to let them off the hook so easily. I didn't know it at the time, but Sam was planning her own little revenge. One day, out of nowhere, she texted me like, "I did something, but I think you'll like it." And I was like, what did you do?" She goes, "Don't be mad, but I shared your note. The one you posted on Tumblr, I made sure everyone saw it." I was kind of shocked at first. Like, I didn't want to air my dirty laundry to the world, you know? But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, screw it. If they didn't care about how they made me feel, why should I care if people know what they did? And when I say Sam shared it, I mean she tagged my parents, Claire, and Nick in the post and called them out. She went full savage mode. The post went viral within our little circle. Sam had over 1,000 friends on Facebook, and people started sharing it like crazy. I had no idea how many people knew about what happened until I started getting texts from random high school friends, old coworkers, even people I barely knew. Everyone was coming out of the woodwork to tell me how messed up my family was, how much they felt for me, and how they couldn't believe Claire and Nick did what they did. But that wasn't even the craziest part. It wasn't just people I knew who were mad. It was people they knew. My mom had this reputation in her church as being this perfect, wholesome lady. And when people in her congregation saw what happened, they were furious. They actually kicked her out of the church. Like, straight up told her she wasn't welcome anymore because of how she treated me. Imagine getting excommunicated from your own church over something like that. I heard she tried to apologize or explain herself, but nobody wanted to hear it. She got labeled a hypocrite, and that was it for her social life. My dad? He lost a ton of his friends, too. They were disgusted by how he sided with Claire and how he told me to just get over it. Some of his closest friends just straight up cut him off. People saw him as this cold, heartless guy, and they didn't want to be associated with him anymore. And Claire? Oh man. Claire got it the worst. I don't even know how she managed to leave the house after what Sam posted. People were calling her a homewrecker, a backstabber, you name it. Some of her closest friends ditched her, said they didn't want anything to do with someone who would betray their own sister like that. I heard she got into arguments with people in public, like at the grocery store, because people would recognize her and call her out. I'm not gonna lie. Part of me was happy to hear she was getting what she deserved. It was like the universe was finally giving her a taste of what she'd done to me. Nick wasn't off the hook either. His family is super religious. Like, go to church every Sunday religious. And when they found out what he'd been doing with Claire behind my back, they freaked. His parents sent him away to some retreat or something to find God again. He was gone for months. And when he came back, he and Claire had broken up. I don't know the details, but I can guess. He probably couldn't handle all the backlash, and it drove a wedge between them. Good riddance. During all of this, I was just trying to focus on myself. My grandparents had gotten me into therapy, and I was starting to make some progress. It was slow, but I was getting there. I wasn't interested in what was going on with my family or how miserable they were. At least that's what I told myself. But deep down, hearing about how their lives were falling apart kind of felt like justice. Like, they finally understood what they put me through. It was messed up, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. One day, though, my grandma sat me down and said, "Your mom tried to call. She wants to talk." I just rolled my eyes. Why would I want to talk to her now? She didn't care before, so why does she care now? My grandma just nodded and said, "I know, honey, but I wanted you to know." I thought about it for a second. Was I curious? Yeah, a little. Did I care enough to actually reach out? Absolutely not. My mom had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could just come back into my life after everything she did. It wasn't just my mom trying to reach out either. Claire had sent me a message on Instagram. Yeah, I forgot to block her there. She was trying to apologize, saying how sorry she was and how she never meant to hurt me. I didn't even read the whole message. I just deleted it and blocked her. I had nothing to say to her. In my eyes, she was still dead to me. After that, things started to quiet down. The frenzy around Sam's post eventually died down, and people stopped talking about it. But the damage was done. My parents were basically social pariahs. Claire had to move to another town because she couldn't handle the constant reminders of what she'd done. Nick was gone, out of my life for good. And honestly, I was fine with that. Living with my grandparents was the best thing that could have happened to me. They gave me space to heal, and they didn't pressure me to forgive anyone. I started to feel like myself again, like I could actually move on from everything. But I wasn't naive. I knew the pain of what my family had done would always be there, somewhere in the background. It was like a scar. It would fade over time, but it'd never fully go away. I didn't need them, though. I had my grandparents, I had Sam, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building a life that was actually mine. Update 1. So, after everything went down and the dust started to settle, you'd think life would just go back to normal, right? But it didn't, not even close. I was living with my grandparents, which was honestly the best thing that could have happened. But the whole mess with my family and Claire still weighed on me. I guess you don't just move on from that kind of betrayal easily. My therapist was really helpful during this time. She wasn't some miracle worker or anything, but she helped me figure out how to process the anger and sadness without letting it eat me alive. It's weird because even though I had completely cut my parents and Claire off, they still found ways to creep back into my thoughts. I would randomly start thinking, like, how could they do this to me? How could my own family choose her over me? Even when I didn't want to care, it was always there. You know? It's hard to explain. I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I got a new job, met some new friends, and even started going back to school part-time. For a while, I was just doing whatever I could to distract myself. I wasn't trying to deal with any of the feelings I had toward my family. I thought that if I just kept myself busy, maybe I could forget about it all. But yeah, that's not how things work. So one night I was scrolling through Instagram, just mindlessly like you do, and I stumbled on a post from one of my cousins. I hadn't really kept in touch with that side of the family since everything blew up, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the picture and there it was, a family reunion. Everyone was there, smiling, having a great time. Everyone except me. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like I wanted to be at that reunion. There's no way in hell I would have gone, even if they begged me. But seeing that picture made me realize just how much I'd been cut out of their lives. It was like I didn't exist anymore. My family had gone on without me, and they didn't seem to care. It was like I'd been erased. That hit me harder than I thought it would. I ended up venting to Sam about it the next day, and she was like, "Screw them. You're better off without people like that. You've got your own life now." And she was right, I knew that. But still, it stung. I didn't even realize how much I still cared until I saw that stupid Instagram post. It wasn't that I wanted to be close to them again. It was more that I couldn't believe how easily they had moved on, like nothing ever happened. But things got weirder after that. About a week later, my dad called. Yeah, my dad, the same one who told me to grow up and take back Claire after everything she'd done. I didn't pick up, obviously. I let it go to voicemail, and when I listened to it later, he was basically begging me to talk. He said stuff like, "We've been thinking about you, and we miss you and want to make things right." For a second, I thought about calling him back, but then I remembered what happened the last time I tried to talk to them. The gaslighting, the guilt trips, the way they made me feel like I was the problem for not forgiving Claire. I couldn't go through that again, so I blocked his number. After that, my mom tried reaching out too. She sent this long email about how she was sorry for everything and wanted to rebuild our relationship. The funny thing is, she never actually apologized for anything specific. It was all vague stuff like, "I'm sorry you feel hurt," and "We're family, and we need to come together." It didn't feel real at all, like she just wanted to smooth things over without taking any responsibility. I didn't respond. I didn't even bother reading the whole thing, to be honest. I just forwarded it to my therapist and deleted it. I knew if I let myself engage with them again, I'd just fall back into the same toxic dynamic, and I was finally starting to get my life together. I wasn't about to let them pull me back down. It's crazy how much cutting off toxic people can change your life. Once I finally let go of the idea that my family would ever be there for me, things started to get better. I mean, it wasn't perfect or anything. I still had bad days, but I was free. No more worrying about what they thought of me. No more bending over backwards to make them happy. It was just me, living my life, doing my own thing. But then, something happened that really messed with my head. One day, I was at the grocery store, just minding my business, and who do I run into? Claire. Yeah, Claire. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and I didn't plan on it either. But there she was, standing in the produce section, looking just as shocked as I was. We just kind of stood there, staring at each other for a minute. I was about to turn around and walk out, but then she came over to me. She started talking really fast, like she was desperate to get everything out before I could leave. She was crying, saying how much she regretted everything, how she missed me, how her life had fallen apart since I cut her off. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I was angry, but I also felt this weird sense of pity for her. She looked terrible, like life had really knocked her down. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over, but it didn't really matter. It was too late. There was nothing she could say to make it right. I just stood there, letting her ramble until I finally said, "I don't hate you, but I don't want you in my life either." And then I walked away. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there crying while I left. It was weird because I thought that seeing her would make me angrier, but it didn't. If anything, it made me realize how far I'd come. I wasn't that sad, broken person anymore. Claire and my parents didn't have any power over me now. I was done with them, for good this time. After that, I didn't think about Claire or my parents as much. It was like that last encounter gave me the closure I didn't even know I needed. I moved on with my life, and yeah, it's still not perfect, but it's mine now. I'm in control. I've got my grandparents, my friends, and that's all I need. If my family wants to fix things, that's on them. But as far as I'm concerned, they're not a part of my life anymore, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Update 2. So, after running into Claire at the grocery store and walking away from her, I thought I'd finally close the door on all that family drama. I was moving on, focusing on my own life, and just trying to live without all that mess hanging over me. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about them much anymore, which felt like a win in itself. But then something happened that threw everything back into my face. It was a regular Friday night. I was just chilling at home with Sam, watching some random Netflix show and eating takeout when I got this weird call from an unknown number. Now, normally, I wouldn't even bother answering unknown numbers, but something in me just said, pick it up. So I did. On the other end was this guy. He was kind of shaky and didn't introduce himself right away, which immediately made me think it was a scam or some telemarketer. But then he says, hey, it's Nick. Nick, as in my ex. I hadn't heard from him in years, not since his family shipped him off to find Jesus or whatever after the whole thing with Claire. I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to just hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. So I'm like, what the hell do you want? He hesitates for a second and then goes, I need to talk to you. It's important. Important after all this time? I wasn't buying it. But before I could tell him to screw off, he starts going on about how his life has been a mess since everything happened, how he regrets what he did, and how he wants to apologize properly. I could hear the desperation in his voice, and for a split second I felt bad for him. But then I remembered how much he'd hurt me, how much they'd both hurt me, and I just wasn't in the mood to reopen that wound. I told him, look, Nick, I've moved on. I don't care about your apology. Whatever happened between you and Claire or whatever regrets you have, that's on you. I don't want anything to do with it. I was ready to hang up when he said something that made me freeze. He said, it's not just about me and Claire. There's something you don't know. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm not the only one who betrayed you. Your family. There's more to the story. Now, at this point, I didn't even want to believe him. I thought he was just trying to drag me back into the drama. But something in his voice, the way he said it, it didn't feel like a lie. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet up with him the next day. I don't know why. Maybe part of me needed to hear whatever it was he had to say, just to get full closure. Or maybe I was just curious. Either way, I was about to walk into something I wasn't prepared for. The next day, we met up at a coffee shop. I hadn't seen Nick in so long, and when I did, he looked different. Like life had chewed him up and spit him out. He was thinner, had bags under his eyes, and just looked worn down. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but the other part remembered how he betrayed me, so I kept my guard up. We sat down, and there was this really awkward silence for a minute. I could tell he didn't know how to start. Finally, I was like, you said there's something I don't know, so just say it. He took a deep breath and started talking. And what he told me, well, it completely blindsided me. Apparently, my parents knew about Nick and Claire way before I found out. They'd known for months, maybe even longer. And not only did they know, but they actually approved of it. My mom had encouraged Claire to go after Nick because she thought we weren't compatible or whatever. She thought Claire would be a better match for him, and that I was being clingy with Nick. My own mother had been playing matchmaker behind my back, trying to set my boyfriend up with my sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like the room was spinning. I interrupted him like, wait, are you saying my mom was okay with you cheating on me? With my sister? He nodded, looking down at his hands, and said, yeah, I didn't want to go along with it at first, but Claire kept pushing and your mom kept saying it was for the best. I know that doesn't excuse anything, but I didn't think you knew. I just sat there staring at him, my mind racing. All this time, I thought the betrayal was just between Nick and Claire. I had no idea my mom had been orchestrating the whole thing behind the scenes. I felt like such an idiot. How could I have missed that? How could I have thought my parents were just passive in all of this? Nick kept talking, saying how he regretted it and how he wished he'd never gone along with it. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was too busy trying to process what he'd just told me. My own family, my own mom, had sabotaged my relationship because she thought Claire was better for Nick than I was. Eventually, I cut him off. I didn't need to hear anymore. I thanked him for telling me and walked out of the coffee shop. My mind was spinning, and I felt like I was going to explode. I couldn't believe how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just about Nick and Claire anymore. It was about my whole family being in on it, watching me fall apart and doing nothing to stop it, actually encouraging it. When I got home, I sat in my car for a long time, just thinking. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to do anything to let out the anger I was feeling. But instead, I just sat there numb. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront my parents, to blow up at them and demand answers. But the other part of me knew it wouldn't make a difference. They'd just gaslight me again, tell me I was overreacting, like they always did. I didn't know what my next move would be. All I knew was that this betrayal went way deeper than I ever imagined, and the people I thought I could never trust again had somehow managed to hurt me even more. Update 3. So after I found out my own mother had been behind the whole thing with Claire and Nick, I felt like I was living in a bad movie. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything in my head. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. I mean, who does that to their own kid? It wasn't just about a guy anymore. This was about my entire family, my own mother, actively trying to screw me over and thinking it was okay. I woke up the next morning feeling like I was going to explode. I didn't care about moving on or staying calm anymore. I was pissed, and I needed answers. So I did what I knew I probably shouldn't. I drove over to my parents' house. I hadn't been there since I'd cut them off, but I couldn't just sit around anymore. I needed to know why. When I got there, I didn't even bother knocking. I had a key, so I just let myself in. My parents were in the kitchen, making breakfast like it was any other day, completely unaware of the bomb that was about to drop. They looked shocked to see me, especially my mom. My dad kind of gave me this awkward smile like he wasn't sure if he should be happy I was there or scared. I didn't waste time on small talk. I just blurted it out. Did you know about Claire and Nick? Did you set them up? My mom's face went pale. She didn't answer right away, and I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this. My dad looked confused, like he didn't even know what I was talking about. But my mom? She knew. Why does that matter now? She finally said, trying to brush it off like it was no big deal. I lost it. I slammed my hand down on the table and shouted, "Why does it matter? Are you serious? You ruined my life. You stood by and watched while I was falling apart, and you did nothing. You let Claire and Nick hurt me because you thought it was for the best?" My dad's face changed when I said that. He looked at my mom like he was piecing it together, like he hadn't known the full story either. "What is she talking about?" he asked her. My mom tried to calm me down. She started talking in that condescending voice she always used when she thought I was being dramatic. She said, "You were too attached to Nick. It wasn't healthy. I thought if Claire was with him, you'd finally see that he wasn't right for you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was doing what was best for you." That's when it clicked for me. She didn't even think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she was helping me by destroying my relationship and pushing Nick toward Claire. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't sorry. She was justifying it, like she was some kind of hero in this twisted story she'd written. I turned to my dad and asked, "Did you know?" He looked at me, then at her and said, "No, I didn't. I had no idea she was involved." He looked like he was about to be sick. It was like I'd punched him in the gut. At this point, I didn't even care anymore. There was no excuse that could make any of this okay. I was done trying to understand. My mom kept talking, trying to explain how she was just looking out for me and doing what she thought was best. But I wasn't listening. All I could think about was how I'd spent so many months hating Claire and Nick, when the real mastermind behind all of it was sitting right in front of me the whole time. "I can't believe you," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "You didn't care about what was best for me. You just wanted control. You've always wanted control. And now, because of you, I lost everything." I could see that my dad was starting to get angry too. He stood up and said, "Why didn't you tell me any of this? Why would you go behind my back like that?" But my mom was still stuck in her own little world, defending herself. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "Claire was better for Nick, and I was trying to protect our family. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her straight up, 'You didn't protect anything. You destroyed it. I will never forgive you for this. Ever.' And with that, I walked out of the house. I could hear my dad yelling at her as I left, but I didn't stick around to hear the rest. I was done. Done with all of it. On the drive back, I felt weirdly calm. I think I'd expected to feel more, I don't know, relieved? Like confronting her would give me some kind of closure. But it didn't. If anything, it just solidified what I'd already known. I couldn't trust my family. Not my mom. Not even my dad at this point. They weren't the people I thought they were. And they never would be. When I got back to my grandparents' place, I told them everything. They were shocked, but not surprised, if that makes sense. They'd always had their suspicions about my mom, but they hadn't wanted to interfere. They were supportive, though. My grandpa gave me a hug and said, "You did the right thing by confronting her, but you don't owe them anything. You've got your own life to live now." And he was right. I did have my own life to live. I'd spent so long being angry and hurt, but at the end of the day, the only thing I could do was move forward. I couldn't change what my family did, but I could change how much space I let them take up in my head. I haven't talked to my parents since that day. My dad sent me a couple of texts trying to apologize, but I never replied. As for Claire, I haven't seen or heard from her since that day in the grocery store. And Nick? He's just a ghost from my past now, someone I don't think about anymore. What I've realized through all of this is that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you in ways you never expected, but that doesn't mean you have to let them keep hurting you. I've built my own life now, surrounded by people who actually care about me. My grandparents, my friends, Sam, they're my real family. They're the ones who stuck by me when everything fell apart. And now I'm finally at peace. It took a long time and it wasn't easy, but I'm okay with where I am. My family might still be out there living their lives, but I'm living mine too, and for the first time in years, it feels like mine. Story 3. My girlfriend ended our 8-year relationship and expected me to keep supporting her financially, but I cut her off and watched karma crush her world. Sup Reddit. I'm Sean, 32 male. Earlier this year, my girlfriend of 8 years nuked our entire relationship. 8 years. Gone. I was planning to marry this woman. Monica, 31 female, didn't even have the decency to start a fight or give me some kind of buildup. Nope. She came home from her sister's place one Thursday evening, sat down on the couch we'd bought together 3 years ago, and hit me with, "I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a while." That was it. She said it the same way you'd tell someone you're switching to oat milk, like she'd already moved on months ago. I sat there like an idiot with my drink halfway to my mouth, trying to process what just happened. I asked her if I'd done something wrong, if there was another guy, if she wanted to try counseling, anything. She just shook her head with this bored expression and said no, I hadn't done anything wrong. She'd just outgrown the relationship and needed to find herself. I've never felt more blindsided in my entire life. Yeah, we weren't perfect, but we were good. Or so I thought. I loved this woman. I'd built my entire adult life around her. Hell, I'd been supporting her financially for 6 straight years after she decided corporate life wasn't fulfilling her soul and quit her marketing job. And I was fine with it because I loved her and genuinely believed we were building something together. Apparently, I was the only one who thought that. My best friend Brendan had warned me about a year ago when Monica started getting really into Instagram and posting these cryptic quotes about knowing your worth and not settling. He'd pulled me aside at a barbecue and said, "Bro, I'm just saying, keep your eyes open." I'd brushed him off, told him he was being paranoid. I wish I'd listened. So there I was, sitting across from this woman I'd spent years with, watching her act like she was doing me a favor by ending things. She was calm, almost relieved, like she'd been carrying around this decision for months, and was happy to finally drop the weight. I asked her one more time if this was really what she wanted, if there was anything I could do. She nodded and said, "Yeah, this is what I want. I need space to grow." I was paying for everything in her life, and she needed space to grow. At that point, I realized there was nothing left to say. I wasn't about to beg someone to stay if they didn't want to be there. That's not how I operate. So I told her straight up to pack a bag and go stay at her sister Kristen's place. I needed time to think, and I couldn't do it with her sitting there, acting like we'd just agreed to try a new restaurant. She didn't like that. At all. Her whole calm demeanor cracked, and she asked why she had to be the one to leave. Said it was her home, too. I reminded her that she was the one ending things, not me. Then I asked for her house key. That really set her off. She started going on about how I was being aggressive and controlling, but after some back and forth, she finally tossed the key on the table. Watching her pack was surreal. 8 years together, and she had a suitcase ready in 20 minutes. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "I hope you can be mature about this." I just stared at her. Then she walked out without another word. That night, I sat in the living room with Brendan on FaceTime. He didn't say I told you so, but I could see it in his face. "What are you gonna do?" he asked. I looked around at all her stuff everywhere. "I'm gonna take my life back," I said. Brendan raised his drink to the screen. "About time, brother." I didn't sleep much that night. Kept replaying everything, trying to figure out where it went wrong. I'd given her 8 years of my life, financial support, freedom to find herself without worrying about bills or rent, and somehow it still wasn't enough. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. I knew I had to start making moves, but first I needed coffee, and then I needed a plan. Around noon, my phone rang. Monica. I almost didn't answer, but maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she wanted to actually talk like adults. So I picked up. "Hey," she said, casual as anything. I kept my voice neutral. "What's up?" "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing," she said. "Check in." like she hadn't just nuked my entire life less than 24 hours ago. You wanted to check in? I repeated slowly. Yeah, I know this is hard for you, but I think we can still be friends eventually. This woman had just ended an 8-year relationship and was already planning our friendship arc. I had to ask, are you actually sure about this? About ending things? Yeah, she said without hesitation. This is what I need right now. For me. That's when I decided to start making some practical changes. Okay, I said. Then I need to handle some logistics. What do you mean? She asked, suddenly sounding less casual. I laid it out for her. I'd be removing her from my auto policy. Yeah, I had my truck, but the sedan she drove every day was titled to me, canceling the phone plan that was under my name, and closing the joint checking account we shared where my paychecks went. This wasn't me being vindictive. It was just basic common sense. We weren't together anymore, so why would I keep paying for everything? What? Are you serious right now? Her voice went up about 3 octaves. Yeah, I'm serious. Why would I keep paying for your stuff when you just ended our relationship? Because you're not a child? She snapped. God, I knew you'd make this difficult. You're being so petty. It's not petty, I said, keeping my voice level. It's reality. You can't expect me to keep taking care of you financially when you've decided you don't want to be with me. She went off. Started yelling about how I was trying to punish her for breaking up with me. How I was being vindictive and cruel. How she'd sacrificed so much for our relationship. And this was how I was treating her. I reminded her that her main sacrifice was quitting her job 6 years ago to find herself, and then spending my money ever since. That didn't go over well. She called me a jerk and hung up. Over the next few days, I actually followed through. The first stop was the insurance company. Removed her from my policy. Then I went to the phone store and canceled her line. Then I drove to the bank and closed the joint account. I'd already moved direct deposit to my personal account, and the bank allowed either owner to close a joint account. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of my life. My phone blew up with texts from her. Paragraphs about how heartless I was. How I was making her life impossible. One message said, "You're literally leaving me with nothing. How am I supposed to survive?" I didn't respond. Through my buddy Brendan, I found out she was staying with her sister Kristen and losing her mind. Kristen was apparently on Monica's side completely, telling her I was being abusive by cutting her off financially. According to Kristen, I was a narcissist for not continuing to support Monica after the breakup. The nerve these women got. Monica had started applying for jobs, but after 6 years out of the workforce, nobody was calling her back. Her resume was basically a crime scene. A week after the breakup, she called again, from Kristen's phone. I almost didn't answer but decided to get it over with. "I need to talk to you about the car," she said. "No hello. Straight to business. What about it? I need you to let me use it, just until I can get back on my feet and save up for my own." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "You want me to let you use my car? You have your truck," she said, like that made it reasonable. "You don't need both. I need to get to job interviews. Then take an Uber. Are you kidding me right now? Do you know how expensive that is?" "Not my problem," I said. "You wanted to end things. You wanted independence. Well, independence means you figure out your own transportation." "You're such a jerk," she hissed. "I can't believe I wasted 8 years with someone so heartless." "You didn't waste anything. You had a free ride for 6 of those years. Now the ride's over." She hung up on me. Again. By the end of that week, I'd cut every financial string that connected us. The car was mine. The phone was disconnected. The bank account was closed. Brendan came over that weekend. We sat on my back patio. "How you feeling?" he asked. I thought about it. "I feel free." He nodded. "Good. That's what you should feel. Now let's celebrate that." About 10 days after the breakup, Monica texted saying she needed to come get the rest of her stuff. I wasn't thrilled about seeing her again, but I wanted her belongings out of my house. So I agreed. Told her to come by on Saturday afternoon. She showed up at 2 with Kristen in tow for moral support. Kristen gave me this disgusted look the second I opened the door, like I was something stuck to her shoe. "Sean," she said coldly. I just nodded at her and stepped aside to let them in. I kept the door open and stayed in the living room so there wouldn't be any "he locked me out" drama. Monica walked past me without a word and headed straight to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing. Kristen stayed in the living room, arms crossed, staring at me like she was my prison guard. "You know you're handling this really poorly," she said after a minute. "Am I?" "Yeah. Monica's really struggling right now, and you're just making it worse. She ended things, Kristen, not me. That doesn't mean you get to be cruel about it." I just stared at her. The mental gymnastics these two were doing could win gold medals. I'm not being cruel. I'm just not funding her lifestyle anymore. You're being a jerk, Kristen said. Then she walked toward the bedroom to help Monica pack. I stayed in the living room, scrolling on my phone, waiting for this to be over. After about half an hour, Monica came out pulling a suitcase and carrying my laptop under her arm. My laptop. Whoa, what are you doing with that? I asked, standing up. I'm taking it, she said matter-of-factly. I use it all the time for job applications. That's mine. I bought it. You have your work laptop, she countered. You don't need this one. Doesn't matter if I need it or not. It's mine. Put it back. Kristen stepped between us. Oh my God, Sean, just let her take the laptop. You're being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous? I looked at Kristen, then back at Monica. You're literally trying to steal my stuff and I'm the ridiculous one? It's not stealing, Monica said, her voice getting louder. We were together for 8 years. This stuff is basically shared property. No, it's not. I paid for it with my money. That makes it mine. That's when I noticed the suitcase looked way too full. I walked over and unzipped it before either of them could stop me. Sure enough, it was packed with stuff that wasn't hers. My wireless headphones. The nice set of kitchen knives I'd bought last year. My Nintendo Switch and games. A designer watch my parents had given me for my 30th birthday. Even some of my clothes. I started pulling things out one by one. Want to explain this? Monica's face turned red. Those are things I gave you. You gave me my own watch that my parents bought me? That's impressive. I'm talking about the other stuff. The headphones I bought on Amazon? The knives I got at Williams-Sonoma? My own gaming system? I held up a hoodie. My college hoodie from a school you didn't even go to? Kristen jumped in. She uses those things all the time. You're seriously going to fight over every little item? Yeah, Kristen, I am. Because they're not hers to take. Monica started crying. Right on cue. The waterworks started, and she went into this whole speech about how heartless I was being. How after 8 years together, I was nickel and diming her over a few items. How she couldn't believe I'd changed so much. I stood there holding my watch and my headphones feeling absolutely nothing. You can take your stuff, but everything else stays here. You're unbelievable, Kristen said. She's right. You have changed. The old Sean would never act like this. The old Sean was an idiot, I said. And that version's retired. Monica looked at Kristen with this dramatic, wounded expression, then back at me. I hope you're happy with yourself, she said through tears. I'm getting there, I replied. They spent another 20 minutes repacking the suitcase with only her actual belongings. The whole time, Kristen kept making snide comments under her breath about how petty I was being. When they finally left, Kristen turned back at the door. You know what? You deserve to be alone, she said. Then they were gone. I stood there for a minute, then started laughing. Brendan had been right. I should have done this years ago. That night, Monica sent me a novel of a text message. 5 paragraphs about how I'd shown my true colors. How I was vindictive. How she'd given me the best years of her life, and this was how I repaid her. I read the whole thing, then replied with, K. Nothing else. Brendan thought it was hilarious when I showed him. Over the next few days, I boxed up the remaining stuff she'd left behind. Some random toiletries, a few books, a pair of shoes. I put it all in a box and left it in the garage. If she wanted it, she could coordinate with Brendan to pick it up when I wasn't home. I was done dealing with her face to face. Through the grapevine, I heard she'd been complaining to everyone who would listen about how I'd abused her by cutting her off, how I was making her life miserable. Kristen was apparently backing up every word, telling people I'd been financially controlling during our relationship and was now punishing her for leaving. The narrative they were spinning was impressive. They'd turned me into some kind of villain for the crime of not wanting to keep paying for my ex-girlfriend's life after she dumped me. But I didn't care. Let them tell whatever story they wanted. The people who actually knew me knew the truth, and that was enough. 2 weeks after the suitcase incident, my phone rang late on a Tuesday night. Unknown number. I stared at the screen for a minute, then picked up. Yeah, it was Monica. I need help, she said. Her voice was shaky, almost panicked. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. With what? I've applied to like 50 places and nothing and nobody's calling me back, she paused. I don't know what to do. That's rough, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But I don't know what you want me to do about it. You could help me, she said, her voice getting sharper. I gave up my career for you. For us. The least you could do is help me get back on my feet. There it was. You didn't give up your career for me, I said slowly. You quit your job 6 years ago because you said you couldn't be creative in a corporate environment. Those were your exact words. I quit because you said you'd support me. I did support you. For 6 years. While you figured out what you wanted to do with your life. So now you get to support yourself. She started crying, going on about how hard everything was, how her sister was pressuring her to find work and contribute to bills, how she was sleeping on Kristen's couch and had no money for anything. I have nothing right now, she sobbed. I'm sorry you're struggling, but this isn't my responsibility anymore. So that's it? Her voice went from crying to angry in a heartbeat. 8 years together, and you're just going to watch me suffer? You made this choice, Monica. Not me. You don't get to come back crying for help now. She started yelling then, calling me names, saying I'd never really loved her, that she couldn't believe she'd wasted 8 years with someone so heartless and selfish. I let her vent for about 30 seconds, then cut in. You done? Screw you, Sean, she hissed. Then she hung up. Over the next week, my phone was flooded with texts. They started emotional, full of regret and apologies. But when I didn't respond, her tone completely shifted. The messages became bitter. I was heartless, cruel, a narcissist, an abuser. She said I was ruining her life on purpose and that karma would come for me eventually. The irony about that. I showed them to Brendan over food one night. He read through them and just shook his head. Bro, this is psycho behavior. Yep. You gonna respond? Nope. Good man. Idal, through our mutual friend Mike, I started hearing more details about what was happening with Monica. Kristen had apparently given her an ultimatum. Find a job and start contributing to rent and bills within 3 weeks, or get out. Monica was spiraling, applying everywhere she could think of, but after 6 years out of the workforce, her resume was basically radioactive. Mike told me she'd had a complete breakdown at a friend's birthday party, started crying at the table about how she'd ruined her life and how unfair everything was. Her friend had apparently tried to comfort her, but Monica just kept going on about how I was destroying her future by cutting her off. The victim mentality was unreal. One evening, about 3 weeks after our last phone call, I was home watching a game when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked through the window first. It was her. She looked rough, hair messy, eyes puffy, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt that looked like she'd been sleeping in it. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. What do you want? I need to talk to you, she said, voice trembling. Please. I stood there for a second, then stepped aside. She walked in and sat on the edge of the couch, hands shaking. I can't do this anymore, she said. I've tried everything, but I can't find work. Nobody will hire me. Kristen's about to kick me out. I have nowhere to go. I waited, knowing what was coming next. I made a mistake, Sean. A huge mistake. I thought I wanted something different, but I was wrong. I miss what we had. I miss you. I still love you. Her words just hung there. But instead of feeling anything, I just felt tired. You don't love me, I said. You love not having to work or worry about bills. That's not the same thing. That's not true, she insisted, tears starting. I really do miss you. Miss us. Monica, you told me you didn't love me anymore. You said you'd outgrown the relationship. You ended things. And now you want back in because reality hit you and you realized how good you had it. I can change, she said desperately. I'll get a job. I'll contribute. I'll do whatever you want. I stood up. I don't want anything from you. I'm done. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. She started begging, saying she'd do anything to fix things, that she'd made a terrible mistake and deserved a second chance. But I wasn't interested. I'd given her 8 years. That was enough. You need to leave, I said, walking to the door and opening it. She sat there looking at me with tears streaming down her face. When she realized I wasn't changing my mind, she stood up and walked toward the door. As she passed me, she stopped. I hope you find someone who deserves you, she said quietly. Already working on it, I said. Then she left. After the door closed, I felt this massive weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time since the breakup, I felt like I'd truly closed that chapter. After that final conversation with Monica, I knew it was completely done. She'd come crawling back hoping to slide back into the comfortable life I'd provided. But I wasn't that guy anymore. A few days later, Brendan texted me saying Kristen had finally kicked Monica out. She'd blown past the deadline to find work and had been freeloading for over a month. Kristen had apparently given her some cash and told her to figure it out. I heard through Mike that Monica had found some part-time gig at a coffee shop, minimum wage plus tips. She was living in a studio apartment in the sketchy part of town. Mike said mutual friends had seen her looking rough. But here's the thing. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. Around that same time, I started seeing someone new. Her name's Harper, and I met her through Brendan's girlfriend Rebecca at a casual get-together. At first, I wasn't sure if I was ready to date. The whole situation with Monica had left me pretty cynical about relationships. But Harper was different from the jump. She's 29, works as a civil engineer, owns her own condo, drives a car she bought herself. She's smart, funny, and actually has her life together. Being with Harper felt like breathing fresh air after being in a stuffy room for years. She had goals and ambitions. She wasn't looking for someone to fund her journey of self-discovery. When I told her about Monica and the whole breakup situation, she was shocked. You supported her for 6 years? She asked. Like fully supported her? Yep, everything. Harper shook her head. That's wild. I can't imagine not working. I'd lose my mind. That's because you're a functional adult, I said. She laughed. Fair point. Things with Harper moved at a healthy pace. No drama, just two people getting to know each other and seeing where it went. Brendan approved immediately. Bro, this one's a keeper. He wasn't wrong. Then, about 2 months into seeing Harper, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a long message full of emotional rambling. I scrolled to the bottom and saw it was signed with Monica's name. She'd gotten a new phone number, apparently. The message was the same old song. She was struggling, barely making rent. She'd made a huge mistake leaving me. Could I please consider letting her move back in, just temporarily, until she got back on her feet? She'd even thrown in that she was happy I'd moved on with Harper, as if she wasn't trying to get back together in the same message. I showed it to Harper. We were having dinner at my place when it came through. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing. I'm not even responding. A few days later, I was grilling in the backyard with Harper when someone knocked on my front door. We weren't expecting anyone. I walked through the house and looked through the window. Monica. Of course. I opened the door but didn't step aside to let her in. What are you doing here? I texted you, she said. You didn't respond. That was intentional. She looked past me and saw Harper standing in the living room. Her expression shifted from desperate to bitter in about 2 seconds. So that's her, she said coldly. What do you want, Monica? She looked back at me, eyes welling up with tears. Right on schedule. I need to talk to you, privately. There's nothing private to discuss. Say what you need to say or leave. She glanced at Harper again, then back at me. Fine. I need help. I can barely afford to live. My job doesn't pay enough. I'm behind on rent. I don't know what else to do. Get a second job. Figure it out. You can't be serious right now. I'm completely serious. Her tears turned to anger. You don't care at all, do you? After everything we went through together, you're just going to watch me struggle and do nothing? Monica, I'm not your boyfriend anymore. I'm not responsible for your life. You made that very clear when you ended things. She looked at Harper again. So you've already replaced me. That was fast. No, I moved on. Harper walked up beside me. Look, Monica, I don't know you, but it sounds like you're trying to make your problems Sean's problems. That's not really fair. Monica's eyes went wide. Are you serious right now? You've known him for like 5 minutes. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know he supported you for 6 years and you dumped him, Harper said calmly. And now you're back because things didn't work out the way you planned. Monica looked between us, her face red. You're both horrible people. You deserve each other. Appreciate that, I said. Then I closed the door. Just closed it right in her face mid-rant. Harper and I stood there for a second listening to Monica yell something through the door. Then footsteps. Then nothing. Well, that was fun, Harper said. Welcome to my life. She smiled. I'm not scared off that easily. That night, Brendan called laughing. Apparently, Monica had texted Kristen immediately after leaving my place. Kristen had then texted one of our mutual friends ranting about me and Harper. The story they were telling was that Harper and I had been having an affair the whole time, and that's why Monica had ended things. The new narrative was impressive, but I didn't care. My life was better than it had been in years. I had a woman who actually contributed to the relationship. Monica could tell whatever story she wanted. I was done playing a role in her narrative. About 3 months after that second confrontation at my house, I'd pretty much forgotten Monica existed. Life with Harper was great. We'd taken a trip to Colorado, met each other's families, and started talking about moving in together eventually. Brendan and his girlfriend Rebecca had become good friends with Harper. My life had completely turned around. But then one night Brendan called with news. Bro, you are not going to believe what happened to Monica. I don't really care what happened to Monica, I said. But I was curious. Just trust me. You want to hear this. Apparently Monica had started dating someone new about a month after she showed up at my place that second time. Some guy named Adrian, who was all over her Instagram. Designer clothes. Expensive watch collection. Pictures in front of luxury cars. The whole 9 yards. She must have thought she'd hit the jackpot. Except Adrian wasn't who he claimed to be. Not even close. At first, everything looked perfect from the outside. He was showering her with gifts, taking her to expensive restaurants, flying her to Miami and Vegas for weekends. She was posting about it constantly. Kristen was hyping her up in the comments. But here's where it gets good. Adrian was completely broke. The designer clothes? Knockoffs or rented? The cars? Leased or borrowed from friends for photo ops? The trips? Funded by maxed-out credit cards and personal loans. The watch collection? Fake as hell. The guy was running a full-scale scam operation. Brendan's girlfriend Rebecca had stayed loosely connected to Kristen, who apparently loved to brag about how well Monica was doing now. But then the story started to change. Adrian had started asking Monica for money. Small amounts at first. 100 here, 50 there. He'd spin some story about his money being tied up in investments or waiting for a big deal to close. Then it escalated. He convinced her to open a credit card in her name, told her they could use it together to build their future. She fell for it completely. Opened a card with a $10,000 limit and handed it over. Within 3 weeks, it was maxed out. He told her not to worry, that he'd pay it off once his deal closed. The deal never closed because there was no deal. Adrian was a professional mooch running game on desperate women looking for a provider. And Monica had painted a target on her back by posting constantly about wanting a high-value man to match her energy. But it gets worse. Adrian had friends. Sketchy friends who started coming around constantly, crashing at Monica's apartment, borrowing money, using her car, eating her food, treating her place like a halfway house. She tried to keep up with their lifestyle, thinking it would pay off eventually. But the debt just kept piling up. Then one day, Adrian ghosted her. Just disappeared. Phone disconnected. Social media deleted. Gone. Left her with a maxed-out credit card, his friends still crashing at her apartment, and some very angry people looking for him. Turns out Adrian's friends weren't just freeloaders. They were the kind of people who loan money with serious interest attached. Very serious interest. And when Adrian vanished, they came looking for payment. Mike called me one night and told me what happened next. Apparently, 2 guys showed up at Monica's apartment looking for Adrian. When she said he'd left and she didn't know where he was, they told her that didn't matter. She'd been living with him, benefiting from the money. They considered her equally responsible. They told her she had 2 weeks to come up with $5,000 or there would be consequences. She panicked and called Kristen, who told her to call the police. But Monica was scared. These weren't the kind of guys you call the cops on without making things worse. She tried calling Adrian from different numbers. Went to his last address. Asked his friends where he went. Nobody knew anything. Or they weren't telling. She was completely on her own holding the bag. When I heard all this, I felt a mix of things. Part of me felt bad because nobody deserves to be scammed or threatened. But another part of me couldn't help thinking this is exactly what happens when you spend your life looking for someone else to solve your problems. She'd wanted an easy life. Someone to fund her lifestyle without her having to work for it. And she found exactly that with Adrian. Except she'd finally met someone who saw her the way she'd seen me, as a resource to be used. The karma was almost poetic, but it was not done. What happened next was even better. The situation with Adrian got worse before it got better. Way worse. According to Mike, Monica ended up having to sell most of her stuff to scrape together money for those guys Adrian owed. The designer bags Adrian had bought her? Turned out they were replicas worth maybe $50 each. The jewelry? Fake. Everything he'd given her was worthless. She sold her TV, her laptop, furniture, anything of value. She even had to pawn some stuff her parents had given her. Made about $3,000 total. She managed to negotiate with Adrian's friends to accept $3,000 upfront and payments on the rest. They agreed, but made it clear what would happen if she didn't keep up with payments. She had to pick up a second job. Started working doubles between the coffee shop and waiting tables at night. Her Instagram went from nightclubs to completely silent. Kristen had stopped posting supportive comments. Apparently, even she was getting tired of the constant crisis. But the real kicker? The credit card company sued her for the maxed-out balance Adrian had left her with. She tried to argue fraud, but her name was on the account, and she'd willingly given him access. Legally, it all fell on her. She ended up having to set up a payment plan that would take her years to pay off. A few months slid by after that. Enough time for the Adrian fallout to finish cratering and fade into background noise. Meanwhile, I was absolutely thriving. After months of dating, Harper and I decided to live together. She listed and sold her condo, and a few weeks later we closed on a place together and moved in. 50-50 partners. Joint account where we both contributed equally. Shared bills. Shared responsibilities. It was like experiencing what a real adult relationship was supposed to be for the first time. Brendan and Rebecca had gotten engaged. They'd asked Harper and me to be in the wedding party. My career was going well. Life was genuinely good. About 4 months after the Adrian situation imploded, I was at a sports bar with Brendan and some friends watching a game when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around and there was Monica. "Sean," she said, "can we talk?" Brendan immediately stood up. "Nah, we're good." "It's fine," I said to Brendan. Then to Monica, "You've got 2 minutes." She looked around at my friends, then back at me. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You were right about everything." "Okay," I said, not giving her anything. "I made so many mistakes. I just wanted you to know that I know that now." "Okay, is that it?" She looked frustrated. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Monica?" "I just thought you'd want to know that I realize what I lost." "I don't care what you realize," I said flatly. "You lost something good because you took it for granted. That's on you. I'm not interested in being your shoulder to cry on." "I'm not asking for that," she said, voice rising. "I'm just trying to apologize." "Cool. Apology acknowledged. Anything else?" She stood there for a second, looking like she wanted to say more. Then her eyes shifted past me, and I saw her expression change. I turned around and Harper had walked in with Rebecca. They'd been out shopping and were meeting us for food. Harper came up and kissed me. "Hey, babe." Then she looked at Monica. "Oh, hi, Monica." Monica's whole demeanor shifted. "Harper. Great. We were just finishing up," I said to Harper. Then back to Monica. "Was there anything else?" "Yeah, actually," Monica said, that bitter edge creeping back into her voice. "How long were you two together before you started dating?" "Just curious." Harper laughed. "We met months after you guys broke up, but I'm sure you've already created whatever story makes you feel better. I'm sure Sean filled your head with all kinds of things about me." "Actually, he barely talks about you at all," Harper said. "You're not really relevant to our life." Monica's face turned red. "You know what? You're perfect for each other. You're both cold jerks." "We prefer the term having boundaries," Harper said. "But sure, go with jerks if it helps." Brendan was trying not to laugh. Rebecca was grinning. Monica looked around at all of us. "This was a mistake," she said. "I should have known better than to expect anything from you." "Probably," I agreed. "You should probably also stop expecting things from people in general. That seems to be your core issue." "Forget you, Sean." "I hope you know you destroyed me." "No," I said. "You destroyed yourself." She stood there for another few seconds, eyes watering, clearly hoping for some kind of emotional reaction from me. But I was done. "Take care of yourself, Monica," I said. She turned and walked out of the bar. Kristen was apparently waiting outside. Through the window, I could see them talking. Kristen gesturing wildly, Monica crying. Then they both got in Kristen's car and drove off. I sat back down at the table. Brendan raised his drink. "Bro, you dodged a bullet." We spent the rest of the night eating and laughing and celebrating Brendan's engagement. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, sitting in an empty house wondering what I'd done wrong. And now look at me. New house. Amazing girlfriend. Actual happiness. All because I'd put myself first. So yeah, I'm good. And as for Monica, she made her choices. She'd have to live with them. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 4. Mom abandoned me at 7, and now her husband wants my inheritance. Hey everyone, I'm Mike. Before I jump in, do me a solid and hit that like button. Trust me, this story's a ride, and you don't want to miss any of it. So let's roll back the clock to when I was about 6. Back then, life felt pretty chill. I lived in this big house with my mom. My dad had passed away when I was just a baby, so it was just the two of us. He left me a fat inheritance, but being 6, I didn't really get what that meant. I just knew my mom always seemed to have money, and we lived comfortably. Anyway, one day, out of nowhere, my mom sits me down. "Mike, honey, I have to go on a business trip. It's really important, okay? You're going to stay with Uncle Rick for a while." Now, at that age, I wasn't thinking too deep into it. Uncle Rick was the fun uncle, the one who let me watch movies I probably shouldn't have been watching and bought me candy whenever my mom said no. So, in my head, I was like, sweet, this is going to be awesome. She hugged me goodbye, and I remember thinking it'd just be for a few days, maybe a week. I waved her off, smiling, not realizing that'd be the last time I'd see her for a long time. Uncle Rick picked me up, and the first few days were great. We ate pizza, stayed up late watching movies. He even let me play his old video games. It was like this mini vacation, and I didn't have a care in the world. But then, things started to change. Days turned into weeks. I'd ask Uncle Rick when my mom was coming back, and he'd just brush it off. "Soon, kiddo, soon." He'd say it with this kind of tired look in his eyes, like he wasn't so sure himself. Weeks turned into months, and that's when I really started to feel it. I'd see other kids at school getting picked up by their parents, and I'd be waiting for Uncle Rick, wondering why it wasn't my mom. I remember one time I asked him again, "When's mom coming back?" And that's when he snapped. It was the first time I ever saw him mad. "Your mom's not coming back, kid," he said, all gruff. "She left you with me, so stop asking." I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but it hurt. Like, I felt this tight knot in my stomach. Why would my mom leave me? What did I do wrong? Living with Uncle Rick went from fun to a nightmare. He started getting annoyed with me over everything. If I left my toys out, he'd yell. If I asked him for help with my homework, he'd sigh like I was the biggest inconvenience ever. He'd say stuff like, "I didn't sign up to babysit some kid, and your mom just dumped you on me." I started to hide out in my room more. I didn't want to make him mad, so I just stayed out of his way. My room became my safe space. I had this small radio I'd listen to, and I'd just draw pictures for hours. It was the only thing that distracted me from everything else going on. Sometimes, I'd try to pretend my mom was just late, that any day now, she'd walk through the door and say, "Surprise, I'm back." But as weeks turned into months, that hope started to fade. There was this one night that really sticks out. I had this stuffed bear my mom gave me, one of those old, worn-out ones with a missing eye. I hugged it close, crying quietly, hoping Uncle Rick wouldn't hear me. I didn't want him to call me a crybaby or tell me to toughen up. But in that moment, I felt so alone. It was like everything I thought I knew about my life just crumbled. It's weird to think a 6-year-old could feel that way, but I did. Things just kept getting worse from there. Uncle Rick's attitude went from annoyed to straight up mean. He'd make comments about how I was eating too much or how I was costing him money. I was just a kid, so I didn't really understand how money worked, but I got the message. I was a burden. I started eating less, even when I was hungry, and tried to keep my room as clean as possible just to avoid any more yelling. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He'd still get mad, slam doors, and sometimes just leave for hours. I'd be alone, sitting in that big, quiet house, and I'd wonder where my mom was. Was she thinking about me? Did she miss me at all? I remember one time, I found this old family photo album in one of the closets. There were pictures of me as a baby, pictures of my mom smiling and holding me, and even some of my dad. It made me feel, I don't know, like I was seeing a life I didn't remember. I flipped through it, hoping for some kind of clue, some hint about why she left, but all I saw were smiles and happy moments. It didn't make sense. How could someone just walk away from all that? Eventually, I stopped asking about her. I figured if she really cared, she'd be back by now. But she wasn't. So what was the point in holding on to false hope? I decided I had to take care of myself because no one else would. I buried myself in schoolwork. I figured if I couldn't control what was happening at home, I could at least control my grades. I became the quiet kid at school, head down, just doing my work. Teachers started noticing, saying I was gifted, and that I had a lot of potential. I didn't care about all that. I just wanted to keep my head down and survive. But sometimes, even when I was trying to focus, I'd see other kids playing with their parents, laughing, and it'd hit me all over again. I'd wonder, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I good enough? I didn't have answers, but the questions kept me up at night. It wasn't until years later that I realized those questions wouldn't ever go away. They just became a part of me, like this shadow I couldn't shake. It's tough when you're a kid, you know? You don't know how to make sense of stuff like that. All you know is what you feel, and I felt abandoned. Looking back now, I get why I buried myself in school. It was the one thing I could control. It felt like if I could ace my classes, if I could prove I was smart, maybe, just maybe, my mom would come back and be proud of me. Maybe she'd realize what she missed out on. But as time went on, that hope got smaller and smaller. And before I knew it, I was just surviving, getting through each day, one at a time, trying to figure out how to make it on my own. So I'm about 14 when this all went down. By this point, I'm used to keeping my head down, focusing on school and avoiding any trouble at home. I mean, school was my escape. It was the one place I could feel like I had some control. And the teachers actually seemed to like me. I kept to myself mostly. Didn't really have any close friends. It was easier that way, you know? No one asking too many questions. But then came this group project. Teachers love throwing these at us like they don't realize how much it sucks to get stuck with random people. Anyway, I get paired with Lisa. She was one of those people who seemed to have it all together, always smiling, always hanging with a big group of friends. We didn't talk much before that, but suddenly we're partners, and I'm thinking, great, She's gonna think I'm a total weirdo. First time we met up to work on the project, I was all awkward and quiet, but she didn't seem to care. She just chatted away like we'd known each other for years. After a while, I started to loosen up and we actually got along pretty well. Turns out she was pretty chill and didn't have that stuck-up attitude I expected. Then one day, she asks me if I want to come over to her place to work on the project. I hesitated because honestly, going to other people's houses always felt weird to me. Like, I didn't want anyone to see how different my life was compared to theirs. But Lisa was persistent, and something about her made me want to say yes. So I did. Walking into her house felt like stepping into a whole different world. I mean, her family was like the total opposite of what I was used to. Her mom welcomed me with this big smile, like I was a part of their family already. "Hey Mike, you hungry? I made snacks." She said it so casually, like it was no big deal. But to me, it was. I couldn't even remember the last time anyone asked me if I was hungry, let alone made me anything. And her dad, man, he was something else. He actually sat down and asked me about school, my interests, all that stuff. "So, Mike, what do you like to do when you're not buried in books?" He'd ask, genuinely interested. It caught me off guard. I mean, no one ever really asked me stuff like that. I mumbled some answers, feeling shy and a bit out of place, but they made me feel welcome, like I wasn't some outsider intruding on their lives. Lisa's little brother even came over and showed me his video game collection, insisting we play together. It was such a simple thing, but it meant a lot to me. I realized I had been missing out on all these small moments that other kids probably took for granted. Sitting there, eating homemade cookies and playing video games, it felt like what I imagined a real family was supposed to be like. After that, Lisa and I started hanging out more, even outside of the project. She'd invite me over, and every time, her family treated me the same, like I was welcome there. Her mom would always say, "Mike, you're part of the family now. You don't need an invite, just come over anytime." I'd smile and nod, but inside it was like this warm feeling, like someone actually cared. I tried not to get too attached, though. I mean, it wasn't my family. It was Lisa's. And part of me was scared that if I let myself enjoy it too much, it'd all just disappear, like everything else in my life. But Lisa didn't let me pull away. She'd always be like, "Hey, you're coming over after school, right?" And I couldn't say no. She became my best friend, and her family became this safe place I could go to when things with Uncle Rick got too rough. There was this one day when everything felt different. I had a rough night before. Uncle Rick had gone off on me because I left a light on, and he kept saying stuff like, "You're nothing but trouble. Why couldn't your mom take you with her?" That hit me hard, and I went to school feeling pretty low. I must have looked miserable because Lisa pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I tried to brush it off, saying I was just tired, but she wasn't buying it. "Mike, you know you can talk to me, right? Whatever's going on, I'm here for you." The way she said it, I could tell she actually meant it. So for the first time, I opened up a little. I didn't spill everything, but I told her enough. How my mom left, how Uncle Rick wasn't exactly thrilled about taking care of me. Lisa listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Your mom's missing out. You're a great person, and if she can't see that, then that's her loss." It was such a simple thing to say, but it felt like a weight lifted off me. No one had ever said anything like that before. From that point on, Lisa's house felt like a second home. Her parents would always ask how my day was, and her mom would make these dinners that were better than anything I'd ever had at Uncle Rick's. It was like stepping into another universe every time I walked through their front door. I felt safe there, like I could finally relax and just be a kid for a while. But of course, the more time I spent there, the more I noticed just how different my life was. It was hard not to compare. I'd see how Lisa's family interacted, how they joked around, how her parents actually listened to her and supported her, and I'd realize how much I missed out on. I remember thinking, why couldn't my mom be like this? Why did she have to leave? But I kept those thoughts to myself. The last thing I wanted was to seem jealous or ungrateful when they were being so kind to me. I knew I couldn't stay at Lisa's forever, though. Every time I'd leave her house, it was like going back to reality. I'd walk home dreading whatever mood Uncle Rick might be in. Sometimes he wouldn't even be there. He'd be out late doing who knows what. And when he was home, it was like walking on eggshells, trying not to set him off. I started spending more and more time at Lisa's. Her parents didn't seem to mind. If anything, they encouraged it. "Mike, you don't need to ask. Just come by anytime you want," her dad would say, giving me this reassuring smile. And I wanted to believe them, but part of me kept waiting for the day they'd get tired of having me around. I mean, why would they want to deal with someone else's kid when they had their own family? But that day never came. In fact, they seemed to go out of their way to make me feel included. One weekend, they even took me along on this family picnic. Lisa's mom packed this huge basket of food, and we all went to this park. It was one of those perfect days where everything just felt right. For a few hours, I forgot about all the stuff going on at home. I laughed, played soccer with Lisa's little brother, and for a moment, I felt like I belonged. That feeling of belonging was something I hadn't felt in years. And honestly, I started craving it. Lisa's family showed me what life could be like if you had people who genuinely cared about you. It gave me this tiny flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But I knew better than to hold on to hope too tightly. Life had already shown me how quickly things could change, and that's where things stood. I had this second family that I cherished, but deep down, I still felt like an outsider. I was grateful, but there was always this voice in my head reminding me not to get too comfortable. After all, good things didn't usually stick around in my life for long. So I'm 17 at this point, almost done with high school and still spending a lot of time at Lisa's. I'd gotten used to things being a certain way. My routine was solid: school, Lisa's, home, and repeat. But then, out of nowhere, Uncle Rick hits me with some news that stopped me in my tracks. I remember it clearly. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in my room doing some homework when I heard him yelling from the living room. "Mike, get out here," he shouted. I froze for a second, not sure what to expect. When he called like that, it usually wasn't for anything good, but I dragged myself out there, trying to stay calm. I walk in, and there he is, standing by the door, looking annoyed as usual. "Your mother's back," he says, like he's announcing the weather or something. My heart practically stopped. My mom, after all these years, it didn't feel real. I just stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke, but he didn't. "She's outside," he added, sounding fed up. "Go talk to her." I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to run out the door, hug her, and ask where she'd been. But the other part of me was pissed. Like after all this time, she just shows up like nothing happened? My hands were shaking as I walked out, and when I saw her, it was like I was looking at a stranger. She looked different. I mean, it had been almost 10 years, so of course she did, but still it was weird seeing her again. She had this guy with her, Jack. He had this big grin plastered on his face like he was trying way too hard. I remember thinking, who the hell is this guy? "Mike, sweetie," my mom said, all teary-eyed, like we were in some kind of reunion movie. "I've missed you so much." She pulled me into this awkward hug, and I stood there, stiff. I didn't hug her back. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Act like everything was fine, like she hadn't just vanished for nearly a decade? When she let go, she introduced me to Jack. "This is my husband," she said, like that was supposed to mean something to me. Jack reached out to shake my hand, and I did it, but I kept my guard up. He had this smile that was too wide, and I felt this gut feeling that something was off. "Hey there, bud. We've heard so much about you," he said, sounding way too friendly. My mom starts going on about how she had to work through some personal issues, and that's why she was gone for so long. I just nodded, feeling numb. Personal issues was supposed to explain everything? That's what she was going with? It didn't add up, but I wasn't about to cause a scene. So I played along, nodded some more, and told her it was good to see her. But inside, it was like this storm was brewing. I felt angry, confused, and honestly hurt. After a few awkward minutes, they asked if they could come in, and I stepped aside, letting them into the house. Uncle Rick was nowhere to be seen. Typical. He probably didn't want to deal with the drama, and I couldn't really blame him for that. We all sat down in the living room, and my mom starts talking about wanting to make things right, about how she regrets everything and how she wants us to be a family again. Jack jumps in, nodding and saying, "We want to be here for you, Mike. We're a family now." It all felt so fake, like they'd rehearsed this speech before coming over. I kept my answers short, playing along, but my mind was racing. I mean, why now? Why show up after all these years? And who was this Jack guy, really? Something wasn't sitting right with me, but I didn't know what to say or how to react. I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't going to get all emotional and start crying. I'd learned to keep my guard up. After that day, they started showing up more often. My mom would drop by with homemade meals, spaghetti, casseroles, you name it. Jack tried to get all buddy-buddy, offering to teach me how to build stuff like a real man. I played along, figuring it was easier than fighting back. But every time they left, I'd sit in my room, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. Lisa was the only person I could talk to about it. When I told her my mom was back, she looked surprised, but not exactly happy. "Are you sure this is a good thing?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. I mean, she's my mom." Lisa sighed like she wasn't convinced. "I just don't want to see you get hurt again," she said. I appreciated her looking out for me, but I didn't know what to do. I wanted to believe my mom. I wanted to believe she was really trying to fix things. But the truth was, there was this part of me that didn't trust it. Maybe it was from everything I'd been through or the fact that she'd been gone so long. Whatever it was, I just couldn't shake this feeling that something wasn't right. One day my mom showed up with this gift, a fancy watch. I know I missed so many birthdays, so I wanted to give you something special, she said, her eyes getting all misty. I looked at the watch, all shiny and expensive looking, and I didn't know what to say. Part of me was touched, like maybe she really was trying to make up for lost time. But another part of me felt weird accepting it. Lisa's words were stuck in my head. She'd warned me about them showering me with gifts, and now it was happening. I wanted to believe my mom had changed, but the way she and Jack were acting, it just felt off. Like, why try so hard to make everything seem perfect all of a sudden? One evening, when Lisa and I were hanging out, she brought it up again. Mike, I know you want to believe they've changed, but doesn't this all seem too sudden? She asked. I got defensive, like I always do when I don't want to admit something's bothering me. They're just trying to make up for lost time, Lisa. What's wrong with that? She sighed and looked at me, all serious. I don't trust Jack. The way he talks, the way he acts, I just get this bad vibe. I rolled my eyes, trying to brush it off. You're imagining things. They're just trying to be a family. But her words kept bugging me. I tried to push it out of my head, but there was this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. I started paying more attention after that. Little things started standing out, like how Jack always seemed to steer the conversation toward money. He'd say stuff like, So, Mike, you've got a bright future ahead. Any plans for college? But the way he said it felt more like fishing for info than friendly chit-chat. And my mom, she'd get all fidgety whenever I mentioned my dad's inheritance. I could tell she didn't want to talk about it, which just made me more suspicious. But I kept playing along, pretending everything was fine. I needed time to figure things out. I knew something was up, but I didn't have proof yet. And until I did, I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. I wasn't a kid anymore. I'd learned to keep my guard up. But deep down, I knew one thing. I couldn't trust them. Not yet. And that feeling, that gut instinct, was about to lead me somewhere I never expected. So, I'm doing my usual routine. School, hanging out with Lisa, avoiding Uncle Rick's mood swings, and things seem okay on the surface. But now, every time my mom and Jack come over, I'm paying attention to every little thing. I noticed how Jack always found a way to bring up money, like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. And my mom would keep quiet when he did, just nodding along. It was starting to become clear that whatever they were up to, it wasn't just about reconnecting. Then one night, everything changed. I was in the kitchen grabbing a snack when I heard them talking in the living room. I was about to walk in when something about their voices made me stop. They weren't laughing or chatting like usual. They were whispering. And it didn't sound friendly. I stayed hidden around the corner, listening closely. Jack's voice was low, but he sounded frustrated. We need to get that money, Claire. You said it'd be easy. My heart started racing. Money? What money? My mom responded, sounding stressed. I'm trying, but Mike's not as clueless as you think. We can't just come out and ask for it. I felt like the floor was disappearing beneath me. So that was it. This whole reunion, all the visits, the gifts, they were trying to get my dad's inheritance. I leaned back against the wall, feeling this mix of anger and hurt. I mean, I kind of suspected it, but hearing them actually talk about it like that, like I was some pawn in their plan, hit me harder than I expected. It was like everything I feared was true. They didn't come back because they cared about me. They came back because they wanted what was mine. I quietly went back to my room, my mind racing. I felt stupid, like I should have seen it coming sooner. Lisa had warned me, and I didn't want to believe her. But she was right all along. I was just too desperate to have a family again that I ignored all the signs. But that night, as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I made up my mind. If they thought I was just some dumb kid who'd hand over my inheritance, they were in for a surprise. The next day at school, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying their conversation over and over in my head. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. During lunch, I found Lisa and told her everything I overheard. She looked at me, her eyes wide. Mike, I knew something was up, but that's worse than I thought. She didn't hesitate for a second. We need to find out more. If they're really after your money, we need proof. I nodded, feeling grateful that she was always by my side. We came up with a plan. Every time I was around my mom and Jack, I'd try to record our conversations. I figured if I could catch them saying something on tape, I'd have something to use against them if they tried to pull anything. That weekend, my mom and Jack invited me out for lunch, saying they wanted to spend some quality time together. Normally, I would have said no, but this time I saw it as an opportunity. I hid my phone in my pocket with the recorder on, making sure it was angled just right so it could pick up everything they said. We were sitting at the restaurant, and they were putting on their usual show, smiling, asking about school, pretending like they cared about my life. But then, Jack started steering the conversation toward college. So, Mike, have you thought about what you'll do after high school? College is expensive, you know, but I bet you're all set with your dad's inheritance, right? I tried to act casual, shrugging like I didn't really know. I haven't thought much about it, I lied. Jack leaned in a bit, lowering his voice like he was sharing some big secret. Well, your mom and I have been thinking. We know it's a lot to handle on your own, and we just want to make sure you're making the right decisions. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. He was doing that thing where he pretended to be concerned, but I knew better now. We could help you manage it, you know, just temporarily. Make sure it's invested properly. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. I almost laughed at how obvious he was being, but I kept a straight face. I'll think about it, I said, playing dumb. Inside, I was fuming. It was so clear now. Everything they were doing was just to get to my money. Later, I showed the recording to Lisa. See? They're trying to get their hands on it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She nodded, her face serious. We need more. One recording might not be enough if they deny it. You need to get them talking again. And this time, make sure they admit what they're really planning. I started watching their every move. The next time they came over, I acted like I was finally warming up to them. I let them talk about family, how they wanted to make things right. It was hard to fake it, especially when all I felt was anger, but I knew I had to play the long game. Jack seemed to fall for it. He got more comfortable, talking about their struggles and how they'd been through some tough times. He mentioned bad investments, money troubles, and how they needed help. I pretended to feel sorry for them, nodding along like I was considering helping out. Finally, Jack went for it. You know, Mike, we've done everything we can, but we're still in a bind. If you could sign over a small part of the inheritance just to get us back on our feet, we'd pay you back as soon as we can. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I made sure the recorder caught every word. I'll think about it, I told him, pretending to be hesitant. My mom chimed in. Mike, we just want what's best for you. We're a family. Families help each other. Hearing her say that almost made me snap, but I held it in. If anything, it made me more determined to get the truth out there. After they left, I listened to the recording with Lisa. She nodded, satisfied. We've got enough. They're trying to manipulate you into giving up your money. We spent hours going through everything I had recorded, making sure we had a solid case. It was hard to accept that my own mom, the person who was supposed to care about me, was just using me. But I knew I couldn't let them win. I had worked too hard to get to where I was, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that away. That night, I felt a weird sense of relief. It was like I finally had some control over the situation. I knew what I had to do, and this time I was going to make sure they didn't get away with it. No more playing along. I was going to fight back. So, here we are. After all the sneaking around and recording, I finally had the evidence I needed. My mom and Jack had been trying to scam me out of my inheritance, and now it was time to confront them. But I knew I couldn't just run up to them, yelling about what I knew. I needed to be smart about it, make sure they couldn't worm their way out. First thing I did was talk to Lisa. She'd been my rock through all of this, and I trusted her more than anyone. We sat down and went through everything I had. Recordings, notes, everything. We need a plan, she said, her eyes serious. You can't just show them what you've got. They might try to twist things or worse, destroy evidence. She was right. If they caught wind of what I was doing too early, they could ruin everything. So we came up with a plan to catch them red-handed. I had to make them think I was ready to hand over the money. I know, it sounds risky, but it was the only way to get them to admit everything directly. We needed something they couldn't deny later on. I called my mom that evening. Hey, I've been thinking about what you and Jack said, I told her, trying to sound unsure. Maybe we could meet and talk more about it? I could practically hear her relief over the phone. Oh, Mike, that's great. Let's meet tomorrow for dinner, okay? We can talk through everything. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted, an opportunity to get them both in one place. I made sure everything was set up, and I even asked Lisa to hang back at the restaurant as backup, just in case things went south. She agreed, saying, We've got this, Mike. Don't worry. The next evening, I showed up to the restaurant with my phone ready, the recorder tucked in my pocket like before. I found my mom and Jack sitting at a table, all smiles like they hadn't just spent the past few months trying to scam me. Hey, bud, Jack said, giving me that fake friendly grin of his. I forced a smile back and sat down, trying to look as relaxed as possible. We went through the small talk for a while, how school was going, what my plans were for after graduation. I played along, but every time Jack steered the conversation back to money, I nodded, acting like I was really thinking it over. I know you two have been trying to help, I said, pretending to hesitate, and I appreciate it. Maybe, maybe you're right. I could use some guidance. Jack's eyes lit up like he'd just won the lottery. Well, we're just here for you, Mike. We want to make sure you're taken care of. My mom was nodding like her life depended on it. We're a family, and families support each other, she added, trying to sound genuine. I let them keep talking, and soon enough, Jack started going on about how I should transfer part of the inheritance into an account he'd set up for my benefit. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. Okay, I'm open to that, I said, but I want to make sure everything's done legally. I was thinking we could meet with a lawyer to make sure it's all above board. Jack's face twitched for just a second, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. He tried to cover it up, smiling again. Of course, of course. We want to make sure you're protected, after all. But my mom looked nervous, like she was scared of what might come next. I pushed a little more. I actually have a lawyer friend who said they could come by right now. Is that okay? I said, trying to act casual. The truth was, I'd set everything up already. Lisa's dad was a lawyer, and he agreed to come and help me with this. I wanted witnesses, people who could back me up if things got ugly. Jack's smile wavered, and my mom's eyes went wide. Mike, honey, there's no need for that, she said, her voice shaky. We trust each other, don't we? That's when I knew they were panicking. They hadn't expected me to get a lawyer involved. Yeah, but I just want to make sure everything's clear, I said, keeping my tone friendly. It's a big decision, right? I could see them both starting to sweat. Jack opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Lisa's dad walked in, wearing a professional look that screamed, "No nonsense!" Hi, I'm Mr. Collins, Mike's legal representative, he said, sitting down next to me. I understand there's some discussion about transferring assets. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jack tried to play it off, saying, "Oh, we were just talking about some ideas, nothing serious?" But I wasn't about to let them backpedal. Actually, Jack, you were saying earlier that you needed the money to help with some debts, right? He shot me this look like he wanted to strangle me right there. But with Lisa's dad sitting next to me, he had no choice but to keep up the act. Well, yes, just some temporary assistance, he mumbled, clearly annoyed. Is that so? Mr. Collins said, raising an eyebrow. Because if you're asking Mike to transfer any part of his inheritance, it needs to be documented properly. Otherwise, it could be considered financial manipulation. My mom looked like she was about to cry. Mike, we just want what's best for you. We wouldn't do anything to hurt you, she insisted. But the act was up. I could see it on their faces. They knew they'd lost. That's when I pulled out my phone, playing the recordings I had collected over the past few weeks. My mom and Jack's voices filled the room, their words clear as day. Jack's face went pale, and my mom's hands started shaking. We were hoping you could sign over your inheritance, Jack's voice said from the recording. We're in a bind. Jack tried to reach over the table like he was going to grab my phone, but Lisa's dad stopped him. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he said calmly. It's all being recorded. My mom broke down then. She started crying, saying she was sorry, that she never meant for things to go this far. But I just stared at her, feeling empty. You didn't mean for this to happen? You were planning this the whole time, I said, my voice steady. I trusted you, and you tried to use me. Jack wasn't as emotional. He leaned back in his chair, his face stone cold. Fine, you got us. But let's not act like you're some innocent kid. You've been living off your dad's money for years, and we're just trying to get our share. Hearing that felt like a punch to the gut, but it also made everything clear. This wasn't about family. It was about greed, plain and simple. Get out, I said, pointing to the door. Both of you. I'm done. They left, my mom still crying, and Jack muttering under his breath. When they were gone, I felt this weird mix of relief and sadness. Lisa's dad put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Mike, he said. Lisa, who'd been waiting just outside, came in and gave me a hug. I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself. I nodded, but the truth was, I felt a bit broken. I'd wanted a family, and now I had none. But as I looked at Lisa and her dad, I realized I still had people who cared about me, people who had my back. Maybe it wasn't the ending I hoped for, but at least it was real. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. Story 5. This story is titled, Dad Found Out My Salary, then tried to hand my house to my spoiled sister. so I made him regret it. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway for obvious reasons. Hey Reddit, I've been trying to write this post for like an hour now. Keep deleting and starting over. But I need to get this off my chest because it's eating me up inside. I'm 31, male, working as a real estate developer now. But this whole thing started back when I was 15. My real mom died from cancer when I was 4. When I turned 7, Dad, 42 male at the time, married this woman. I'll call her Beth, 35 female, because that's her real name, LOL. She seemed nice at first, did that whole trying too hard stepmom thing, you know? But everything changed after she had my half-sister Jenny. When I was kid, Sad was always super harsh with me, like way over the top strict. Nothing I ever did was enough for him. I still remember getting a B+ on this really hard chemistry test, and instead of being happy, he just looked at me and went, "Why isn't this an A? Made the basketball team?" He'd be like, "Why aren't you starting?" That kind of stuff, all the time. But with Jenny, totally different story. She could literally fail a test and they'd be like, "Oh, honey, it's okay. You tried your best." Beth made sure Jenny was treated like some kind of princess while I was just there, the guy who kept messing everything up. Looking back now, I'm pretty sure I had ADHD or something that never got diagnosed. Like I couldn't sit still in class, had trouble focusing, that kind of stuff. But instead of trying to figure out what was wrong, Dad would just scream at me. His favorite thing to say was, "Why can't you just be normal like your sister?" While Beth stood there nodding along like I was some kind of problem that needed fixing. Dad worked these crazy long hours at his construction company, so he wasn't home much. That's when Beth would really show who she was. She'd forget to make enough food for dinner, so I'd have to make myself a sandwich. Or she'd wash my clothes wrong on purpose so they'd shrink or get ruined. Little stuff that I couldn't really prove. You get what I mean? If I tried telling Dad, he'd just say I was making trouble again because that's what Beth had him believing. The worst part was all the mind games she played. She'd move my stuff around, then tell Dad I was being messy. Or something would get broken and somehow it was always my fault. Dad believed every word because why would Beth lie about that? She had him completely wrapped around her finger. Then came that day that changed everything. I was walking home from school, taking my usual shortcut through Wilson Park. That's when I saw Beth with this guy by the old gazebo. At first I thought maybe it was just some friend or whatever, but then I saw them kissing. And not just a quick kiss either, if you know what I mean. I think Beth saw me running away, but I wasn't sure. I recognized the guy too. Mark, I think his name was. He used to come to our house sometimes for these charity meetings Beth was supposedly running. Real buff dude, always wearing fancy suits, looked like he lived at the gym. I had no clue what to do. Tell Dad? Yeah, right, like he'd believe me. Beth had spent years making sure Dad thought I was just some troublemaker. Plus, Jenny was 8 at the time, and Dad was obsessed with her. He'd probably think I was just jealous or trying to cause problems. So I kept my mouth shut, tried to forget what I saw. But then I started noticing stuff I couldn't unsee. Like how Jenny's hair was this weird reddish-brown color that nobody else in the family had. Dad never noticed because he was always distracted. One night, I got up to get some water and overheard Beth on the phone. I was about to walk into the kitchen, but the second I heard her tone, I stopped. She was whispering, but I caught enough to make my stomach drop. "You don't understand, Mark. He's starting to notice." I had no idea who she was talking about at first, but then she said it. "He thinks she's his, but we both know the truth." I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I knew exactly who she meant. Jenny. My dad wasn't her father. Mark was. I must have made some noise because Beth suddenly went quiet. Then she called out, all fake sweetness, "Honey, you shouldn't be up this late." I bolted back to my room before she could see me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd be sick. I didn't have proof, but I knew now. I knew the truth. And I knew Beth would do anything to keep me from telling Dad. Beth must have figured out I knew something, though. She started watching me like crazy, especially around Jenny. I couldn't even walk past Jenny's room without Beth appearing out of nowhere asking what I was doing. She started telling Dad I was acting weird around Jenny. Now I get it. She was building up to something, making Dad suspicious of me. I remember this one time, I was just helping Jenny with her multiplication tables. Basic math stuff, you know? Beth came in and practically yanked Jenny away, saying she'd help instead. Then told Dad I was getting too close to Jenny. The way she said it, man, I can still hear her voice. Makes me feel sick thinking about it. That's how things went for like 2 weeks. Beth watching every single thing I did, whispering stuff to Dad when she thought I couldn't hear. Dad started giving me these weird looks at dinner. I tried staying out of the house as much as I could, but that just made everything worse. Beth told Dad I was probably doing drugs or something. Plus, nobody even asked if I was okay. Nobody cared that my grades were tanking because I was so stressed out. Dad just got madder and madder at me. After about 2 weeks after I saw Beth with Mark in the park, I came home from school like normal that day. Something felt weird right when I walked in. There were 2 police cars parked outside our house, and I could hear Beth crying before I even opened the door, like that super fake crying people do when they're trying to get attention. I walk in, and there's Beth on the couch, crying her eyes out with 2 cops sitting across from her. Dad's standing in the corner, looking like he's about to murder someone. Jenny's nowhere to be seen. Everyone stops talking and looks at me when I come in. One of the cops stands up and asks if we can talk. They take me to the kitchen while the other cop stays with Beth and Dad. That's when they tell me that Beth and Jenny told them I'd been touching Jenny, like inappropriately. I couldn't even process what they were saying at first. Like my brain just shut down or something. I kept saying, "What? No, that never happened," over and over. But they just kept asking these horrible questions. Where did I touch her? How many times? Did I threaten her to keep quiet? I felt like I was going to throw up. I could hear Beth in the other room, still doing that fake crying thing, saying stuff like, "I should have known. I saw the signs." Dad wasn't saying anything, just standing there with his fists clenched. The cops asked if I wanted to make a statement. I told them Beth was lying, that she was trying to get rid of me because I saw her cheating on Dad. Big mistake. They didn't believe me. Dad completely lost it when he heard me say that. Started screaming about how I was trying to ruin his marriage because I was jealous of Jenny. Called me every name you can think of. Said I was sick in the head and needed help. The cops couldn't find any actual evidence, obviously since nothing ever happened. Plus I was only 15 back then. But the damage was done. Dad threw a garbage bag at me and told me I had 10 minutes to pack my stuff and get out. Said if I ever came near Jenny again, he'd kill me himself. I tried one more time to tell him about Beth and Mark, but he literally grabbed me by my shirt and shoved me toward the stairs. I'd never seen him that angry before. Beth was standing there with this tiny smirk that only I could see. I grabbed whatever clothes I could fit in the bag and my school backpack. Tried to get my Game Boy, but Dad said everything in the house was his since he paid for it. The whole time I was up there, I could hear Beth downstairs, probably making sure Dad stayed mad. When I came back down, Jenny was there. She looked confused, like she didn't understand what was happening. Beth had her arms around her like she was protecting her from me. That's what kills me the most. The look on Jenny's face. She was just a kid. Beth used her own daughter to get rid of me. Dad told me to give him my house key. Said I wasn't his son anymore. Beth made this fake sad face and said, "Maybe someday you'll get the help you need." I wanted to scream that she was lying, that she was the one who needed help. But what was the point? They weren't going to believe me. They watched me leave, probably making sure I actually went. I looked back once. Dad was holding Jenny and Beth was still doing that fake crying thing. The last thing I heard was Dad telling Jenny she was safe now. I walked around for hours that night, had like $40 in my wallet and no idea what to do. Couldn't go to any of my friends' houses because Beth had already told all their parents I was some kind of predator. She'd planned this whole thing perfectly. Found this abandoned building where some homeless guys stayed. They let me crash there that first night. That's where I lived for the next few months. Couldn't go to school anymore, obviously. Couldn't get a real job because I was only 15. Did some stuff I'm not proud of just to eat. The worst part, Beth made sure everyone in town heard her version of the story. I couldn't go anywhere without people giving me these looks. Lost all my friends. Even teachers who used to like me wouldn't talk to me anymore. My whole life was just gone. That's why I had to leave town eventually. I ended up spending about 6 months in that abandoned building I mentioned. It was this old warehouse near the train tracks. There were like 5 to 6 other guys living there too. Most of them were actually decent people who just had bad luck, you know. This older guy, Tom, kind of took me under his wing. He'd been living on the streets for years after his wife died and he lost his job. He taught me stuff like where to get food, which places would let you use their bathroom, how to stay warm in winter, basic survival stuff I never thought I'd need to know. I kept thinking Dad would snap out of it, realize the truth, and come get me. But he never did. He just didn't care. I tried getting jobs, but nobody would hire me. Beth had made sure everyone in our small town knew her version of what happened. Even McDonald's turned me down. I was that guy everyone whispered about at the grocery store. Parents would literally pull their kids away if they saw me coming. Started doing some sketchy stuff to get by. Nothing violent, but yeah. Not proud of that time in my life. Tom kept telling me I needed to leave town, start fresh somewhere else. But I was scared, you know? I was just a kid, really. Where was I supposed to go? Then one night, these cops showed up at the warehouse. Someone had reported us for trespassing. They gave us 10 minutes to clear out. I lost most of my stuff that night. What little I had left, anyway. Tom and me walked to the next town over. Took us all night. We ended up at this truck stop diner. I was counting my money, had like $27 left, when Tom tells me he's got a cousin in the city who might be able to help. Said his cousin manages some restaurants and owes him a favor. The city was like 200 miles away, but what else was I gonna do? Tom gave me his cousin's address and the last $40 he had. Told me to get out while I still could. Said he was too old to start over, but I still had a chance. Never saw Tom again after that. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. I took a Greyhound to the city, spent my first week sleeping in the bus station, finally found Tom's cousin, Dave. He was nothing like what I expected. Real clean-cut guy, managed like 3 different restaurants. He gave me a job washing dishes at this fancy Italian place. The first few months were rough. Was sleeping in the restaurant's storage room. Dave let me crash there after hours. Saved every penny I could. Finally got enough to rent this tiny room in a really bad part of town. But hey, it was mine. Started learning everything I could about the restaurant business. Moved up from dishes to prep cook, then line cook. The head chef noticed I was good with numbers and started teaching me about food costs, inventory, stuff like that. The restaurant had this regular customer, Amy. She'd come in with her mom like twice a week. Always sat in my section after I became a waiter. She was in college studying business or something. We'd talk whenever it wasn't too busy. She was the first person in years who didn't look at me like I was garbage. I remember exactly what she said that first night. "Hey, what's good here?" she asked, actually looking at me instead of the menu. The carbonara is pretty great. Marco makes the sauce from scratch," I said, probably sounding like an idiot. "You actually know who makes the food?" She smiled. "Most places I go, the servers just read the specials and disappear." We ended up talking for like 10 minutes about food. Her mom just sat there smiling. Later, I heard her mom say, "Amy, stop bothering the poor waiter. He has other tables." Amy looked around the empty restaurant and laughed. "Yeah, Mom, he's clearly swamped." They started coming in more often, always requesting my section. Amy was studying business at the local college, and she'd sometimes bring her homework. One night, she was struggling with some accounting stuff. "This makes no sense," she groaned, staring at her textbook. "How can a company lose money but still show a profit?" "Creative accounting," I said while refilling her water. "They're probably moving numbers around to make it look good for investors." She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "How do you know about corporate accounting?" Truth was, I'd been reading business books at the library. Wanted to understand how restaurants worked. Maybe open my own someday. Told her this, and she got super excited. "That's amazing. Most people our age don't care about this stuff. Hey, want to look at this problem with me?" Next thing I know, I'm sitting at her table during my break, helping her with homework. Her mom would just watch us with this knowing smile. This went on for months. Amy would come in, we'd talk about business stuff, and I'd try not to fall in love with her. Failed miserably at that part, BTW. She was so smart, but never made me feel stupid. Like this one time. "I don't get why you're working here," she said. "You're clearly good at this business stuff." "Not everyone can afford college," I mumbled, feeling embarrassed. "You don't need college to be successful," she said. "My dad never went, and he owns 3 companies now. He says experience matters more than degrees." That conversation stuck with me. Started thinking maybe I could do more than just work in restaurants. I eventually got my GED by studying at the library on my days off. Amy helped me with the math parts. She never asked about my past, and I never told her. Was too scared she'd stop talking to me if she knew. That was my life for about 5 years. Wake up, work, study, sleep. Repeat. Didn't date, didn't make friends really. Just focused on surviving and trying to be better. The whole time I kept thinking about Jenny, hoping Beth wasn't messing her up too bad. One night, Amy came in looking super excited. Guess what? Dad's looking for someone to help manage his new property development project. Entry-level position, but lots of room to grow. You should apply. I froze up. "Amy, I never even finished high school. But you got your GED right? That's all that matters. Come on, just try. What's the worst that could happen?" The worst that could happen? She could find out about my past. About Beth's lies. About everything. But Amy kept pushing. "Please? For me? Dad trusts my judgment, and I know you'd be amazing at this." So I applied. Had to borrow a suit from Dave. Still fit weird. Interview was terrifying. Amy's dad just stared at me for like a full minute before speaking. Amy says you understand business. Prove it, he said. Somehow I managed to talk intelligently about property development trends I'd read about. Even suggested some ideas for his new project. At the end, he just nodded and said, "You start Monday." When I told Amy I got the job, she hugged me. First time anyone had hugged me in years. I almost cried right there in the restaurant. "See?" she said. "I told you you could do it." That job changed everything. Her dad became like the father I wished I'd had. He actually listened when I had ideas. Taught me everything about real estate development. Within a year, I was managing my own projects. The whole time, Amy and I got closer. We'd get coffee after work, talk for hours. But I never asked her out. Kept thinking about Beth's lies, about my past. Amy deserved better than some guy who lived on the streets. Then came the night that changed everything. We were working late on a project proposal. Just us in the office. "You know," Amy said suddenly, "for someone so smart about business, you're really dumb about some things." "What do you mean?" She looked me right in the eyes. "I've been waiting 2 years for you to ask me out." I just sat there like an idiot. Finally managed to say, "I'm not good enough for you, Amy. There's stuff about me you don't know." "Try me," she said. So I just told her everything. About Beth, about the lies, about being homeless. Kept waiting for her to look disgusted or scared. Instead, she started crying. Then she got mad. Not at me, at Beth and my dad. "Those horrible people," she said. "How could they do that to their own son?" Then she kissed me. Just reached across the desk and kissed me. And yeah, that's how Amy and I finally got together. But life has a way of bringing up the past when you least expect it. Amy and I got married pretty quick after we started dating. Her family was amazing. They actually treated me like a son. We had our first kid, a boy, and bought this really nice 5-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Life was perfect. Then about 3 months ago, I was scrolling through Facebook at work and see this friend request. Profile pic shows my dad, looking way older than I remembered. I just sat there staring at my phone like an idiot. Amy noticed something was wrong as soon as she got home. I was sitting in our kitchen just staring at nothing. "Babe, what's wrong?" she asked, putting our son down for his nap. "Dad found me on Facebook," I said. "He sent a friend request." She sat down next to me. "What are you going to do?" "No idea. Haven't opened his message yet." "Want me to read it first?" I handed her my phone. She opened the message and started reading out loud. "Son, I know it's been a long time. I'm getting older now and been thinking a lot about the past. Not a day goes by that I don't think about you. Beth and I want to make things right. Jenny misses her big brother. Please give us a chance to explain. Love, Dad." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Jenny misses me? She probably doesn't even remember me. She was 8 when everything happened." Amy squeezed my hand. "You don't have to respond." But I did. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I wanted to know why now, after 16 years. So I accepted the request and messaged back, "Why now?" His response came fast. "I'm 58 now. Had some health scares. Made me realize life's too short for grudges. Jenny's getting married soon. Would mean a lot to have you there." We messaged back and forth for a few weeks. Found out Jenny's 24 now. Works in marketing. Engaged to some lawyer guy. Beth's still the same, according to Dad. "Yeah, bet she is." Amy kept telling me to be careful. "People don't change that much," she said. But I wanted to believe Dad had changed. Stupid, right? They asked to visit. Amy said it was my choice, but she'd support whatever I decided. So I said yes. Big mistake. They showed up on a Saturday morning. Dad looked old, like really old. Gray hair, walks with a slight limp. Beth looked exactly the same, actually. Still had that fake smile. Jenny had grown up, looked even more like Mark now, but nobody seemed to notice except me. First few minutes were awkward. Nobody knew what to say. Then Jenny saw our family photos. "Is this your son?" she asked, looking at pictures of our 3-year-old. "Yeah, that's Jake," I said. "I'm an aunt," she whispered, then started crying. Beth immediately went to comfort her. Same old Beth. Dad stepped into my house like he belonged there, eyes sweeping over everything with that barely hidden approval he never used to give me. "You've done well for yourself," he said, nodding. "Real estate development, huh? Never would have guessed." I folded my arms, already bracing for whatever this visit was really about. "Amy's dad gave me a chance," I said, letting the words hang. Unlike some people. Beth, always the spin doctor, jumped in before the silence got too heavy. "We all made mistakes back then," she said, voice syrupy. "We're here to make things right." Amy, who had been standing near the door like she was waiting for a reason to leave, took the out immediately. "I'll check on Jake," she said, disappearing before she could say something she'd regret. Smart. Jenny, though, had no such filter. She wandered through the living room, fingers skimming across the furniture, the walls, like she was trying to claim it. "This house is amazing," she said, peering down the hallway. "5 bedrooms? But you only have one kid?" I forced a polite smile. "Planning for more," I said. "And we use one as an office. Not that it's any of your business." Dad clapped a hand on my shoulder, steering me toward my office with the whole, "Let's talk man-to-man routine." That should have been my first warning. He sank into my chair like he owned it. "Son," he started, "I need to ask you something important." I stayed standing. "What?" "Your sister's getting married. Starting a family." He let that sit for a second, like it was supposed to mean something to me. "They're looking for a house, but everything's so expensive these days." My stomach turned. No way. I could already see where this was going. "You've got all this space," he continued, gesturing around like he was selling me my own damn home. 5 bedrooms for 3 people. Jenny and Steve could really use a place like this. You're doing well. Could easily buy another house. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "Are you seriously asking me to give my house to Jenny?" "Well, not give exactly," he said, like that somehow made it better. "Maybe sell it to them cheap? You make good money now." I literally lost it. "Get out," I said. He sighed, exasperated, like I was the one being difficult. "Son, be reasonable. It's your sister. The sister you chose over me?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. "The one you kicked me out for? That sister? That was a misunderstanding." I barked out a laugh. "A misunderstanding? You threw me out at 15. I lived on the streets." He had the nerve to look annoyed, like I was dragging up something inconvenient. "That's in the past. Jenny needs... Jenny needs..." My voice rose. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "Jenny needs? What about what I needed? A father who believed me, maybe?" Before he could come up with another excuse, Beth came rushing in, that fake, concerned expression plastered on her face. "Everything okay in here?" I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh yeah, Beth. Everything's fantastic." I turned to her, grin sharp enough to cut. "Dad's just asking me to give my house to your daughter. You know, the one who isn't even his." The room went dead silent. Beth's face drained of color. Dad froze. Jenny came looking confused, probably trying to figure out if she'd heard me right. And just like that, the whole game changed. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout. Just walked out of my office and went to find Amy and Jake. Found them in the backyard. Jake playing with his trucks while Amy watched him. One look at my face and she knew something had happened. She took Jake inside while everyone else was still processing what I'd said. Beth tried damage control, telling Dad I was lying, that I was just trying to hurt them like I always did. Classic Beth move. But Dad wasn't buying it this time. Maybe because Jenny was standing right there looking exactly like Mark. Or maybe he'd had doubts all along. He demanded a DNA test right there. Jenny started crying, not the fake kind like her mom, but real, confused tears. She kept asking what was going on, why everyone was yelling. Beth grabbed her and practically dragged her out of our house, saying I was just causing trouble again, trying to ruin their lives because I was jealous. Dad stayed behind. He didn't say anything for a long time, just sat in our living room staring at nothing. Then he asked me how I knew, so I told him everything. About seeing Beth with Mark in the park when I was 15, about how Jenny looked just like him, about how Beth framed me when she realized I might tell someone. He didn't believe me at first, kept saying I was wrong, that Beth would never do that. But I could see the doubt eating at him. All those little things that never made sense were suddenly clicking into place. Jenny's red-brown hair that neither of them had. Her facial features that didn't match anyone in the family. Beth's constant need to keep me away from Jenny. The next week was crazy. Dad actually got that DNA test done. Came to my office when he got the results. Didn't even wait to get home. Just walked in, sat down, and broke down crying. Test showed 0 chance he was Jenny's father. Everything he thought he knew about his life for the last 24 years was a lie. I should have felt satisfied, maybe even happy. This was proof that I'd been telling the truth all along. But watching my dad cry in my office just made me feel empty. This man who'd always seemed so strong, who'd terrified me as a kid, looked completely broken. He asked about Mark. Did I know where he was? What he did? I told him what little I knew. Mark used to hang around the homeless spots sometimes, usually messed up on something. Haven't seen him in years, though. No idea if he's even still alive. Dad walked out of my office looking like he'd aged 2 decades in 10 minutes. But he wasn't defeated, he was furious. I figured that was the end of it. Let them deal with their own mess. Not my problem anymore. Then Amy called me at work the next day. Turned out Dad had gone home and lost it. Beth tried to spin it, like always. Said the test had to be wrong. that the lab made a mistake. But for the first time, Dad wasn't buying it. Decades of manipulation and lies came crashing down all at once, and he snapped. He didn't just yell, he hurt her. Bad. She's in the hospital now. 3 fractured vertebrae. Doctors say she'll probably need pain meds for the rest of her life. Jenny was the one who called the cops. Dad got arrested right there in their living room. They're talking 3 to 5 years since he's got a clean record, and his age might work in his favor. But Beth's family is pushing for the maximum sentence. And Jenny? Her whole world just collapsed overnight. The wedding's off. Turns out her fancy lawyer fiancé wasn't interested in inheriting this level of baggage. Now she's been blowing up my phone, begging me to help her find her real dad. Amy keeps telling me to block them all, to walk away and be done with it. And she's probably right. But part of me can't. Not for Beth, not for Dad, but for Jenny. She didn't ask for any of this. Everything she thought was true about her life just turned into a lie. Then today, I heard Beth's already hooked on the pain meds. Her family checked her into rehab. Jenny's staying with her aunt, refuses to even speak to Beth. Dad's looking at real prison time. Their perfect little family, gone. Just like that. And the weirdest part? I don't feel good about any of it. I thought proving I was telling the truth would feel satisfying, that I'd finally feel some kind of justice. But it just feels empty, like watching a house burn down long after there's anything left inside to save. But at that time, I was just focusing on my family. Amy was pregnant again, a girl this time. And those extra bedrooms were finally going to good use. Just not in the way Dad and Beth expected. Funny how life works out sometimes. However, after 2 months, everything went down. Things have gotten even more complicated. Dad's trial was last month. I didn't go. My lawyer advised against it. Plus, I honestly didn't want to see any of them. Found out through Jenny that he got 3 years. Could have been worse. But the judge took his age and clean record into account. Still, at 58, 3 years is a long time. Beth's still in rehab. Turns out she'd been taking pain pills way before Dad put her in the hospital. Her sister told Jenny that Beth's been using them for years. Just hit it really well. Makes sense now why she was always so paranoid and making up crazy stuff. She's looking at least 6 more months of treatment. Jenny's been, well, she's not doing great. She went looking for Mark on her own, asking around at homeless shelters and stuff, finally found someone who knew him. Turns out he died 2 years ago from an overdose behind some convenience store. Jenny completely broke down when she found out. She keeps texting me these long messages at like 3 a.m., talking about how her whole life feels like a lie. Says she can't even look in the mirror anymore because all she sees is Mark's face. I feel bad for her, but Amy says I need to keep my distance. She's right. Every time I respond to Jenny, she gets more attached, starts asking more questions about the past. The weirdest part? Jenny's ex-fiancé tried reaching out to me. Wanted to know if the crazy ran in the family because he's worried about having kids with her. Told him to get lost. Yeah, Jenny's going through stuff, but she doesn't deserve that kind of judgment. Found out Beth's been telling people I made up the whole thing about Mark to get revenge. Even with the DNA test proving Jenny isn't Dad's kid, she's still trying to make me look like the bad guy. Some of our old neighbors actually believe her. Small town people love drama, I guess. Amy's pregnancy is going well. We're having a girl. Sometimes I look at my son playing and think about Jenny at that age. Makes me wonder if things would have been different if Dad had noticed the signs earlier, or if I'd told someone else about seeing Beth with Mark. But you can't change the past, right? The house feels different now. Like all that negative energy from when they visited is finally gone. We're turning Jenny's future room, the one Dad wanted us to give her, into a nursery for the baby. Amy's got it all planned out. Pink and gray theme, little stars on the ceiling. I still think about Tom sometimes, that homeless guy who helped me when I first got kicked out. Wish I could tell him how things turned out. Show him I made something of myself like he said I could. Hope he's okay wherever he is. Been getting messages from Dad's side of the family. Some supporting him, some mad at him for what he did to Beth. None of them ever cared where I was all those years I was homeless. Funny how family works sometimes. That's pretty much where things are at now. Not sure there's much more to tell. Life goes on, you know? But to everyone who's been following this story and sending support, thanks. Writing all this out helped more than I thought it would. Special thanks to the person who suggested therapy. You were right. Jenny messaged me one last time yesterday. Said she's moving out of state, starting fresh somewhere new. Asked if we could stay in touch. Told her maybe someday, but not now. Need to focus on my own family for a while. That's it, I guess. Story's over. No more drama, no updates needed. Sometimes the best revenge is just being happy, you know? Story 6. Stepsister lied, told my parents I'm a prostitute. I kicked her from my wedding and cut off my parents. So, this all started when I was 17, and I had no idea that one family vacation would basically ruin my life. It sounds dramatic, but trust me, this isn't one of those situations where it's just a little sibling rivalry. This was the moment where my relationship with my family started to fall apart, thanks to my stepsister Leah. She was 14 at the time, and we had never really been close. Like, I wouldn't say we hated each other before, but we just didn't vibe, you know? So we're on this family trip to a beach resort. It's supposed to be one of those nice, relaxing vacations, except for the fact that I'm forced to share a room with Leah. I didn't have a choice, and I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured, whatever, I'll survive. I was wrong. Big time. Leah had this attitude like she was better than everyone else. Maybe it's because she was the baby of the family, or maybe she was just like that. But either way, she was always the golden child in my dad and stepmom's eyes. Meanwhile, I was just there. Not like the black sheep, more like the forgotten sheep. They didn't hate me, but they didn't really care either. You know the type. Anyway, after a couple of days of pretending to be civil, Leah and I had a huge argument. I don't even remember how it started. It was probably something stupid, like me borrowing her hairbrush without asking or her hogging the bathroom, but it escalated fast. Before I knew it, we were screaming at each other, and she threw a pillow at me like a 10-year-old having a tantrum. After that, she completely iced me out. For the rest of the trip, Leah didn't say a word to me. No good morning, no pass the sunscreen, nothing. She literally acted like I didn't exist. And honestly, I was fine with that. I thought, cool, I don't have to deal with her. But the silence didn't stop when we got home. She kept ignoring me, like full on pretending I wasn't there. And at first, it was just kind of weird. I figured she'd get over it after a while. I mean, she's 14, right? She can't stay mad forever. Wrong again. Things started getting really strange when she began spreading rumors about me. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently Leah had been telling our stepmom and my dad that I was, get this, a drug addict and a prostitute. Yeah, you read that right. She said I was selling my body for money and that I was hooked on drugs. And you know what the worst part is? They believed her. I didn't find out until a few months later, but by then, the damage was already done. Leah had convinced them that I was this total screw-up, and my dad and stepmom were starting to treat me differently. They wouldn't outright say anything, but I could tell by the way they acted. They were distant, cold, judgy. My dad would barely look at me, and my stepmom started watching me like a hawk every time I left the house. At first, I had no idea why they were acting like that. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Yeah, I had smoked weed a couple of times at parties, but it wasn't like I was some drug addict. And I'd gone on a couple of dates, sure, but I wasn't doing anything remotely close to what Leah was accusing me of. But no matter how hard I tried to act normal, my parents were convinced I was this terrible, rebellious teenager. It all came to a head one night when my dad confronted me. I was just sitting in my room, minding my business, when he barged in and started yelling at me about how I was ruining the family and how I needed to get my life together. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I asked him, and that's when he dropped the bomb. He told me that Leah had confessed to seeing me sneaking out at night, meeting random guys and doing drugs. My first reaction was to laugh because it sounded so ridiculous. Like, was he serious? But he wasn't laughing. He was dead serious, and the angrier he got, the more I realized this wasn't just some misunderstanding. He actually believed her. I tried to defend myself. I tried to tell him it wasn't true, that Leah was lying, but he didn't want to hear it. He told me I was disrespecting my family and that I needed to shape up, or I'd end up getting kicked out. That's when I realized it didn't matter what I said. He was never going to believe me. Leah had poisoned their minds against me, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. Things only got worse from there. My stepmom started treating me like I was some criminal. She'd go through my stuff when I wasn't home, looking for drugs or evidence of whatever Leah had told her. I felt like I was being watched 24/7, and it made me paranoid. Every time I came home, I wondered if this was the day they'd finally kick me out. Leah, meanwhile, acted like nothing was wrong. She'd still ignore me, but every once in a while, I'd catch her smirking at me, like she was proud of what she'd done. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea why she was doing this to me, but I knew one thing. I couldn't trust her. It didn't take long before I started to spiral. I mean, how could I not? My whole family thought I was some degenerate, and I had no one on my side. I started to isolate myself, staying in my room as much as possible, trying to avoid my dad and stepmom. I didn't have a lot of friends at the time, so I didn't really have anyone to talk to about what was happening. I felt completely alone. Looking back, I should have left sooner. I should have just packed my bags and gotten the hell out of there. But I was scared. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was still in school trying to finish up my last year. So I stayed, hoping that somehow things would get better. But they didn't. They only got worse. Okay, so after Leah started that whole rumor about me being a prostitute and a drug addict, everything spiraled. Like, it wasn't enough that my parents basically turned their backs on me. They fully believed her without even questioning it. My dad, who I thought would at least ask me what was going on, didn't even try. He just went straight to lecturing me every chance he got, talking about how I was going to ruin my life and how I was a disappointment. I tried everything. I tried sitting them down, explaining that Leah was lying, that none of this was true. But no matter what I said, they wouldn't hear it. My stepmom even said, "Why would Leah lie? What does she have to gain from this?" And at that point, I had no answer. I didn't know why Leah was doing this. I just knew that she was ruining my life for reasons I couldn't figure out. The weirdest part? Leah wouldn't stop smirking at me every time she walked past. It was like she enjoyed watching me suffer. She knew she had my parents wrapped around her finger and she used it. I don't know how or when it started, but she knew exactly how to manipulate them. And the more I tried to stand up for myself, the more they doubled down on their belief that I was the problem. It got to a point where I just stopped talking. Like, what was the point? They weren't going to believe me, so why even bother trying to explain myself? I'd come home from school, go straight to my room, and try to stay out of their way. I started feeling like a stranger in my own house, and honestly, I didn't even know if I wanted to stay there anymore. But at 17, where was I supposed to go? I didn't have friends I could crash with, and I didn't have any money saved up because my dad would take a chunk of my part-time job paycheck for living expenses. Then came the breaking point. One night, I got home later than usual because I had stayed late at school to finish a project. As soon as I walked in the door, my dad was there waiting for me, looking like he was ready to explode. Without even letting me get a word out, he started yelling, "Where were you? What the hell do you think you're doing, sneaking around like that?" I was confused, like completely blindsided. I told him I was working on a school project, but he didn't believe me. He went on this whole rant about how he knew I was lying and that Leah had told him she saw me sneaking out with some guy earlier. That's when I lost it. I mean, how many more lies was she going to tell? How much more damage could she do before they'd finally see what was really going on? I yelled back, told him that Leah was full of it, that she was making everything up just to mess with me. But my dad wasn't having it. He got right up in my face, and for the first time, I really thought he was going to hit me. His fists were clenched, and he was shaking with anger, like he was on the edge of losing control. I don't even remember what I said next, but whatever it was, it pushed him over the edge. He raised his hand like he was about to hit me, but instead, he slammed it down on the kitchen counter so hard I thought he broke something. "Get out of my house," he said, his voice so low and calm that it was even scarier than when he was yelling. "I can't even look at you anymore. You're a disgrace." I stood there for a second, trying to process what just happened. Was he really kicking me out? Just like that? Over a bunch of lies? I ran upstairs, grabbed a few things, and left without even saying anything to Leah. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't give her the satisfaction. All I could think about was how this kid, this 14-year-old kid, had completely turned my life upside down, and there was nothing I could do about it. I ended up crashing at a friend's place for a few days. They didn't know the full story, but they knew enough to let me stay for a bit while I figured things out. My dad didn't call. My stepmom didn't call. And Leah? She definitely didn't call. It was like they just erased me from their lives overnight. I eventually found a crappy apartment with what little money I had, and for a while I didn't even think about my family. I was just trying to survive. It wasn't easy, but at least I was out of that house. I didn't have to deal with their accusations anymore. I didn't have to deal with Leah smirking at me like she won some kind of twisted game. For a few months, things were quiet. I didn't hear from my parents at all. Honestly, part of me hoped that after some time had passed, they'd realize they were wrong, that Leah was lying, and they'd reach out to apologize. But nope, nothing. But then, out of nowhere, I get a message from Leah's ex-boyfriend. Now, I hadn't thought about Leah in a long time. I mean, why would I? She wasn't a part of my life anymore, and I was honestly happier that way. So when this guy messages me, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but what he told me, that changed everything. Apparently, Leah had gotten drunk one night, like really drunk, and in the middle of some argument with her boyfriend, she just spilled everything. She admitted that she had lied about me all those years ago. Not just little lies either. She confessed that she made up the whole story about me being a prostitute and a drug addict because she was jealous of me. And get this, she was jealous because she thought I was getting too much attention from boys. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process what I just read. My mind was racing. All that time, all those years of my life being destroyed, My family treating me like I was trash. All because Leah was jealous of some teenage crap? I didn't even know how to feel. Part of me wanted to laugh at how ridiculous it was, but mostly, I was just angry. Like, really angry. I thought back to all the times I'd tried to defend myself, all the times I begged my dad and stepmom to believe me, all the nights I cried in my room, feeling like my entire family had turned against me for something I didn't even do. And for what? Because Leah couldn't handle me getting attention? It was unreal. So now I had this confession, right? I had proof that Leah had been lying the whole time. Her ex-boyfriend even said he'd back me up if I wanted to confront her or tell my parents. But honestly, I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to run straight to my dad's house and throw it in their faces like, "See, I told you I wasn't lying." But another part of me was just tired. Tired of the whole situation. Tired of trying to get them to see the truth when they clearly didn't care enough to figure it out on their own. I thought about it for a few days, trying to decide what to do. In the end, I didn't confront Leah. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't do anything. What would it change? Sure, I could show them the proof and maybe they'd apologize, but would that really make up for everything they'd put me through? Would it bring back the years I lost? The answer was no, so I let it go. I blocked Leah's ex-boyfriend's number, deleted the message, and moved on. Or at least, I tried to. The truth is, even though I didn't do anything with the confession, it still weighed on me. It felt like this giant piece of unfinished business that I couldn't just forget about. Every time I thought I was done with it, something would remind me of my family, and the anger would come rushing back. It's hard to explain, but it was like there was this part of me that still wanted justice, even though I knew I'd never get it. Around that time, I had started building a new life. I had a decent job, an apartment that wasn't great, but was mine, and I had met someone. His name was Kyle, and he was everything I needed. He was kind, supportive, and most importantly, he didn't come with any of the baggage that my family did. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had something good in my life. Kyle knew about my family situation. I didn't tell him everything, but he knew enough to understand why I wasn't close to them. He didn't push me to talk about it, which I appreciated. He got that I was trying to move on, and he was just happy to be a part of that. We'd been dating for about a year when the whole Leah confession thing happened, and Kyle was my rock through all of it. But even with his support, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unresolved. My parents hadn't reached out to me since I left. Not once. No calls, no texts, nothing. And as much as I wanted to pretend I didn't care, I did. I hated that I cared, but I couldn't help it. They were my family, and even though they'd hurt me, I still wanted some kind of closure. I just didn't know how to get it. Then, out of the blue, my dad calls me. At first, I didn't even recognize the number because it had been so long since I'd heard from him. When I answered, there was this awkward silence on the other end, like he didn't know what to say. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "We need to talk." Now, if this had been a few years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to have this conversation. I would have been ready to lay everything out and demand an apology. But now, I didn't know if I even wanted to hear what he had to say. Still, curiosity got the best of me, so I agreed to meet him for coffee. When we met up, it was like seeing a stranger. My dad looked older, more tired than I remembered. And there was this awkward tension between us that made the whole situation even weirder. We made small talk for a bit. Nothing important, just catching up. Then finally he got to the point. He told me that Leah had confessed to him. She had told him everything about the lies, the jealousy, all of it. And just like that, all the anger I'd been holding on to came rushing back. He said he was sorry. He said he couldn't believe he had been so blind, that he regretted everything, and that he wished he had listened to me. But here's the thing. I didn't feel any better hearing it. An apology wasn't going to fix what he'd done. It wasn't going to make up for the fact that he had abandoned me when I needed him the most. And as much as he wanted to make things right, I knew it was too late for that. I told him I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't sure I could ever forgive him. And you know what? He didn't even fight me on it. He just nodded like he knew he had lost me, and we sat there in silence for a while. When we finally said goodbye, it felt final. Like we both knew this was the last time we'd speak. And that was it. No big confrontation, no dramatic reunion, just a quiet goodbye. So, fast forward a couple of years, and things are finally going well for me. I've moved on from all the family drama, or at least I thought I had. I'm engaged to Kyle, and we're planning our wedding. Everything should be perfect, right? Well, of course, it's never that easy when it comes to family. I made the decision pretty early on that I wasn't going to invite Leah to the wedding. I mean, after everything she put me through, why would I? I didn't want that kind of negativity around me on such an important day. Kyle agreed, and it felt like a weight off my shoulders to know I didn't have to deal with Leah's manipulative crap anymore. So we're sending out invites, making plans, everything's going smoothly. I even decided to invite my dad and stepmom because, despite all the pain from the past, part of me wanted them there. They had apologized, and I guess a small part of me was still holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could be a family again. But of course, nothing with my family ever goes according to plan. It started with a phone call from my dad. I remember looking at the screen, seeing his name pop up, and feeling a weird mix of excitement and dread. I thought maybe he was calling to talk about the wedding. Maybe he wanted to help or something. I don't know. I guess I was still holding out hope that we could have a normal relationship. Boy, was I wrong. Hey, he said, his voice sounding weirdly stiff, like he was trying too hard to keep things casual. We need to talk about the wedding. I immediately got this sinking feeling in my stomach. I could tell something was off, but I tried to play it cool. Yeah? What's up? There was this long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear him take a deep breath. That's when I knew whatever was coming next wasn't going to be good. Leah's been asking why she didn't get an invite, he said. I literally felt my whole body tense up. Of course, this was about Leah. It was always about Leah. She's not invited, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not having her at my wedding, Dad. That's when he hit me with it. If Leah's not invited, I can't come either. I just sat there for a second, stunned. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad was giving me an ultimatum. Invite the sister who destroyed my life, or he wouldn't be there. I couldn't even find words at first. I mean, how was that fair? I get that he didn't want to choose between his kids, but Leah wasn't just any sibling who I had a little falling out with. She literally ruined my entire relationship with my family, and he expected me to forgive her and have her at my wedding. No way. Are you serious right now? I finally managed to say. I could feel my voice shaking, and not from sadness, just pure anger. You have to understand, he said, sounding way too calm for someone who just dropped a huge demand on his daughter. Leah's really sorry. She's been trying to make things right. That's when I lost it. Trying to make things right? Are you kidding me? She ruined my life, Dad. She lied about me being a prostitute and a drug addict, and you believed her. And now you're saying I have to invite her to my wedding like none of that ever happened? He tried to calm me down, saying something about how family should stick together and how Leah had changed, but I wasn't hearing any of it. I was so angry I could barely see straight. It wasn't just about Leah at this point. It was about my dad, once again, choosing her over me. It was like no matter what she did, she was still the golden child, and I was the one who had to make all the compromises. I finally told him, if you can't come to my wedding without her, then don't bother coming at all. I hung up the phone before he could say anything else. I was shaking, trying to hold back tears because honestly, as mad as I was, it still hurt. I had really thought that after all this time, we could have a decent relationship. But here we were again, me on the outside, and Leah getting all the consideration. It felt like nothing had changed. When I told Kyle what happened, he was furious. He said he couldn't believe my dad would put me in that position and that I didn't owe Leah anything. You deserve better than this, he kept saying. And honestly, he was right. I did deserve better. I didn't deserve to have my own wedding turned into some kind of family drama, because my dad couldn't handle the idea of choosing sides. Over the next few days, I got a bunch of messages from my stepmom, all saying the same thing. Please reconsider. Leah is family. She's sorry. Blah, blah, blah. I ignored every single one. I wasn't backing down. This was my wedding, and I wasn't about to let Leah ruin it just like she ruined everything else. But then, a couple of weeks later, my dad showed up at my apartment. I wasn't expecting him, and when I opened the door, I almost slammed it right back in his face. But he looked so tired, like he hadn't slept in days, and part of me wanted to hear what he had to say. I'm not here to fight, he said as soon as I opened the door. I just want to talk. I let him in, and we sat down. For a minute, neither of us said anything. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Finally, he spoke. I know I've made mistakes, he said, looking down at his hands like he couldn't even face me. But I'm trying to make things right. I don't want to lose you. I didn't say anything. I was too angry to trust myself to speak. I know Leah hurt you, he went on. I know that, and I'm not asking you to forgive her, but she's still my daughter. I can't just cut her out. I felt like screaming. Why was it always about Leah? Why couldn't he see that I was the one who had been hurt, that I was the one who deserved his support? I'm not asking you to cut her out, Dad, I finally said. I'm just asking you to choose me for once. I've spent my whole life being second to her, and if you can't show up for me on the most important day of my life without dragging her along, then maybe you don't deserve to be there." He didn't say anything after that. He just nodded, got up, and left. And that was it. He didn't come to my wedding. Neither did my stepmom. Leah, of course, wasn't invited, and honestly, it hurt. It hurt a lot. But at the same time, it felt like the first time in my life I had truly stood up for myself. The wedding day came and went, and let me tell you, it was the best day of my life, even without my dad and stepmom there. I didn't think I'd feel that way, honestly. I thought not having them would put a dark cloud over the whole thing. But when I walked down the aisle with Kyle's brother, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, I realized something. I didn't need them. I'd spent so long trying to get my dad to choose me, to see my worth. But in that moment, I knew I was better off without his conditional love. Kyle looked amazing, and when I saw him standing at the altar, any stress or anger I had melted away. I wasn't thinking about Leah or my dad or any of the drama that had consumed me for so long. I was just thinking about my future and how I was finally free from all the baggage that came with my family. After the wedding, things were quiet for a while. I didn't hear from my dad, and honestly, I didn't expect to. He made his choice when he decided that Leah's feelings were more important than mine, and I wasn't about to chase after him. I had Kyle, his family, and our friends. They were more of a family to me than my own ever was. But of course, nothing ever stays quiet for long when it comes to my family. About a month after the wedding, I got a message from my stepmom. It was this long, rambling text about how they missed me and wanted to work things out. She went on about how Leah was sorry and how I should just let it go for the sake of the family. I almost laughed when I read it. After everything that had happened, they still didn't get it. They still thought this was something that could just be swept under the rug, like years of lies and manipulation were no big deal. Like I should just forgive Leah because she said she was sorry. But here's the thing. She never even said sorry to me. She never once reached out, never apologized, never even acknowledged the pain she caused. And they still expected me to just move on? I ignored the message at first. I didn't want to deal with it. I thought maybe if I just didn't respond, they'd get the hint and leave me alone. But a week later, I got another one. This time from my dad. It was short and to the point. "We miss you. Let's talk." Part of me wanted to scream, why was I always the one who had to fix things? Why was it on me to reach out and make peace when they were the ones who hurt me? I had given them chance after chance, and every time they had let me down. I was done being the one to make things right. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to go back to pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. So I decided to cut them off completely. I blocked their numbers, deleted them from social media, and told myself that this was it. No more reaching out. No more second chances. It was hard at first because deep down, I still wanted to believe that maybe, somehow, they would change. Maybe my dad would finally see that I deserved better. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't going to happen. He was never going to choose me. He had made that clear when he gave me that ultimatum about Leah. Kyle was incredibly supportive through all of this. He told me over and over again that I was making the right decision, that I didn't owe them anything, and that I deserved to be happy without their toxic influence in my life. And he was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own happiness. I wasn't waiting for my dad's approval or Leah's fake apology. I was living for me, and it felt freeing. But of course, it didn't stop there. My dad found out I had blocked him, and that's when the emails started. Long, emotional emails about how I was tearing the family apart and how my refusal to forgive Leah was breaking his heart. He went on about how family is supposed to stick together no matter what, and how I was being unfair to Leah by not giving her a chance to make things right. I almost didn't respond. I wanted to just delete the email and be done with it, but something in me snapped. I was tired of being the villain in their story. Tired of being the one who was expected to forgive and forget while they got to move on like nothing happened. So I wrote back. I told my dad everything I had been holding in for years. I told him how hurt I was, that he never believed me, how abandoned I felt when he chose Leah's lies over me, how he let me suffer for something I didn't do. I told him that Leah had ruined my life, and that no amount of sorry was going to fix that. I told him that I didn't want to be a part of their family anymore, because clearly, I never really was. They had chosen Leah, and that was fine. But I wasn't going to keep pretending that I could just get over it and move on. It felt good to get it all out, even though I knew it wouldn't change anything. My dad didn't respond to the email, and honestly, I didn't expect him to. He had made his choice a long time ago, and I had finally made mine. Cutting them off was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it was also one of the best decisions I've ever made. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in the shadow of Leah's lies. I wasn't chasing after my dad's approval or trying to fix a family that was never really there for me. I was free. Kyle and I are doing great now. We're starting to think about the future, maybe even having kids one day, and I know that whatever happens, I won't let the past define me. I have a family now, a real one, with people who actually love and support me, and that's more than enough. So yeah, cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Sometimes you have to let go of the people who hurt you, even if they're family, because at the end of the day, your peace is more important than their expectations. And honestly, I've never been happier. Update 1. So, about a year after cutting off my family, I thought I was done with them. I really did. Life was good. Great, even. I had Kyle, we were talking about getting a place together, and for once, I wasn't waking up every day stressed out about family drama. It was like I'd finally hit this point where I could just be happy. But then, out of nowhere, I got hit with some news I never saw coming. One day I was scrolling through social media just minding my business, when I got a message from an old mutual friend of Leah's. We hadn't talked in forever, so I wasn't sure why they were reaching out. At first I thought maybe they were just checking in or something, but nope. The message was simple and straight to the point. Hey, did you hear about Leah? Now let me tell you, that's not the kind of message you ignore, no matter how much you want to stay out of family business. So even though every part of me was screaming, don't get involved, I replied, no, what happened? The next message hit me like a brick. She's in rehab. She got hooked on drugs and tried to kill herself. I remember just staring at my phone, trying to process what I had just read. Leah, rehab, suicide attempt? It didn't make sense. Leah had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who everyone believed. She was the one who ruined my life with her lies, and now this? Apparently, after I cut ties with my family, things had started to fall apart for Leah. She got in with the wrong crowd, started experimenting with drugs, and it escalated fast. From what I was told, it wasn't just some light partying, it was hardcore. Pills, heroin, whatever she could get her hands on. It got so bad that she hit rock bottom and tried to take her own life. Her parents, my dad and stepmom, had found her just in time. They rushed her to the hospital, and after she recovered physically, they checked her into a rehab facility. They were keeping it hush-hush, trying to protect her reputation, but word got out. Small towns, you know. Gossip travels fast. I sat there, reading through the messages, feeling this weird mix of emotions. On one hand, I felt bad. I wouldn't wish something like that on anyone. I didn't want Leah dead, and hearing that she tried to end her life was, well, it was hard to wrap my head around. But on the other hand, a part of me couldn't help but think, karma. It sounds harsh, I know. But after everything Leah put me through, after she tore apart my relationship with my family and lied about me for years, it was hard not to feel like this was some kind of cosmic payback. I mean, she had turned my life upside down, and now, her perfect little world had crumbled. It was almost like the universe was balancing things out. I didn't reach out to my family after hearing the news. I wasn't about to step back into that mess no matter how bad things had gotten for Leah. They made their choice when they believed her lies and treated me like trash. I had no intention of opening that door again just because things had gone south for them. A few days later, I got another message from the same mutual friend. They told me that my dad and stepmom were struggling with Leah's rehab and wanted to reach out to me. They thought maybe I could help somehow, that I could be there for the family during this tough time. I couldn't believe the nerve. After everything they did, choosing Leah over me, believing her lies, cutting me out, they wanted me to come back and play happy family because Leah had hit rock bottom? No way. I sat there for a long time, staring at the message, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell them exactly where they could shove their request for help. But another part of me just didn't care anymore. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need to yell or get angry. I had moved on, and I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their chaos. So I didn't respond. I blocked the mutual friend and kept living my life.